All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Technocrat Live. I'm Matt Newhall, and we are having a panel today. Who are you people? Oh, wait. No, I know who you are. You are Steve May.
No, I'm not. Don't worry
Walden
about
Leverage, Lee Wilbur, and Raris Kachova.
Lies! Or lies.
So Lee is an admin, an engineer, a programmer, and a consultant. Steve is a musician, student, entrepreneur, and media personality. Raris is a physician. And Walden is a business owner, cigar aficionado, and a computer technocrat. Very good. So, we have lots of great questions, but I'm going to leave you guys swinging in the wind because I'm going to do some news. All right, so we got some news. I don't know if anybody's heard, but this came out today. Supreme Court of the United States just ruled on the legality of unconscious blood draws to check to do a tox screen, specifically for alcohol, but I'm sure this is going to apply to any kind of blood-borne chemical that alters your behavior. So I'm not sure how I feel about this. I'm pretty sure it's bad. I'm also pretty sure we're going to be stuck with it for the duration of our lives. The idea is if you're unconscious, the Supreme Court has ruled that you can, a police officer can use some approved device to run your blood and do a scan to see what you're on.
The key thing there was warrantless blood draws.
Warrantly, right. So
without
in the past,
a warrant.
So some states were doing it without a warrant. Some states were assuming that you needed a warrant, and now the Supreme Court has weighed in and said you do not need a warrant to do this. Huge change. If you're on board with privacy rights, I'm kind of torn on this one. I actually think this is a problem. Because to me, the only place where privacy was possible was on private property. If your body is in private property, I don't know what is. Does anybody have any opinions on this or thoughts, or anyone want to chime in on this?
I haven't read the decision, but this comes down on specifically driving and DUI. So there's
Yeah, but it'll be extrapolated.
But at the moment, there's an implied consent when you got your license that you consented to them drawing the blood. I still think it's a crappy decision, but I don't know that we're going to see it go to they can walk onto your property and draw your blood because you're sleeping on your front lawn.
Can they knock you out? And
Well,
then draw your blood?
that's exactly where of course, it's the internet, right? So the comments immediately went to
Frying pan!
This is my warrant. This is my nightstick. So yeah, I mean, there the only tool you have is a hammer. Everything looks like a nail. So I think there will be police who are tempted to do that. Yeah, I'm not thrilled about it. I really pass.
Well,
anyway,
I
don't. It's 50. It's like 50, 40, 60. So close to 50-50. It's too close to call. So.
Wait,
why is it a good decision? Why are you 50-50 and not?
Well, on the one hand,
95?
if I hopped in a 2-ton missile, I did a bunch of damage, possibly hurt a bunch of people, possibly killed a bunch of people. I'm so out of control, I knocked myself unconscious. The police want to know, why did that happen? So that's the upside. The downside is the police run you into a barrier, hit you with their nightstick, draw your blood and say, we don't know, he was unconscious when we found him. And, nobody's the wiser.
Bodycams.
But there's
Hopefully.
So if you were conscious, you feel that they should either have a warrant or your permission.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the fact that you're unable to give your permission obviates the need for the warrant.
Well,
there's a presumption that you would have allowed this.
Like I said, the harm and the way. I like what Lee said is that if you have cameras on it, you know what's happening. You can see. You can go back and revisit the video and see exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. Whenever you have rights like the Fourth Amendment, it's about protecting you when government goes wild, right? So the potential for government to go wild here is there, and I see the destructive power. On the other hand, you have to weigh it against. I also think machine guns should be illegal, like full-on machine guns. Not talking about anything less than that.
I would disagree, but
really?
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. I really think that because anything that can shoot hundreds of bullets a minute is a weapon of war. Of course, I recognize the slippery slope, and I'm actually pro Second Amendment, so I'm against a lot of things. But I get, especially in the context, they just shouldn't have had past prohibition, right? That's why the machine gun came into use, right? Because then you had mafias, and the mafias, created this underground network, and they needed their own enforcement. So that's why they started bringing in heavy weapons and force multipliers like a machine gun, which is more of a force multiplier than, say, a handgun or a rifle. But it's kind of the same thing. Rights are to protect you from government gun wild. Can government go wild and abuse this? Absolutely. So I'm against it. On the other hand, MAD was good year one. I'm not sure it's good in 2019. It may have gone too far.
So
Literally nobody parties anymore.
this probably doesn't work for some reason. Maybe you can give some insight, but the compromise that would seem to make sense. Yeah, draw the blood. You can't test it without permission.
Well, here's the thing. If they are already unconscious and they're brought into the hospital, they're going to do a tox screen anyway. Why does a police officer have to draw the blood?
And in this case, that's actually how it happened. But of course, this opens the gate up for, a licensed procedure and someone who can just, use a device and go, a tricorder and go. Bloop.
Why? But I don't understand, why, when they're going to do the tox screen anyway, the person's in the hospital, they're not going anywhere. We're running the tox screen. You have access, get a warrant for the medical records. They're not going anywhere.
So
why does a police officer have to be involved? I don't understand. The physician.
Oh, well, it doesn't have to be a police officer. Like I said, in this case, it wasn't. It was just they wanted to be able to. The argument that they put in front of the Supreme Court was destruction of evidence. Because of course your liver will just process it, and eventually there won't be any alcohol left in the blood. So was he drunk or not?
Blood gets drawn not by a police officer, by a medical person.
Right. I was using that
By a
example.
doctor, but the police officer has to be there for chain of custody.
The case was
Chain of
using the
custody.
medical records from the hospital. I'm extrapolating it
All
to
right.
eventually this is going to be a device. Clearly now that the Supreme Court has green lighted this, there's going to be a device that's carried around in cop cars that can do the same thing. Which
Why does it have to? I don't understand I don't watch news, so I don't understand the.
well,
premise of,
it doesn't really matter where the blood is drawn. I mean, I was just using that to say that instead of blood being drawn as a decision made by doctors to say, okay, this person's in peril, we need to know what's going on. It's going to be the blood is drawn by the potential for blood to be drawn by a law enforcement agent. Because, this is part of an investigation. We don't want evidence destroyed because that was part of the ruling. That's the part that bugs me, that it's about evidence not being destroyed.
There were some weird things in the ruling, and like I said, I haven't read it in detail.
I only read
summary,
snippets.
But there was also
This literally broke 2 hours of the show, people. I'm
Yeah,
not
I know
lazy.
the dissent. Part of the dissent.
All right,
was
I am
that
lazy, but-
This
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
even the question that we were presented.
Right, right.
The question that came to SCOTUS wasn't even kind of what they ruled on.
Right.
So it's a very bizarre thing all the way around. So
This is such a good
Well,
panel.
well,
Thanks,
you
guys,
see-
for coming. I appreciate this.
Well, you see, that's what kind of bothers me. I understand what Mark is saying about the chain of custody, because even when we do urine testing for Department of Traffic, employment, it's a special seal that goes on. The person has to urinate with the door cracked open. So there is a chain of custody. I just don't see.
And that can be.
The cop could stand there, but the person's unconscious. The test is being done anyway. I don't see where the debate is.
All right, I'm totally gonna humble brag here. I am such a huge nerd. I actually ran the numbers on the odds of a chain of custody being interrupted by a car crash if a cop was carrying a particular piece of evidence in their car. I ran the numbers for national car crashes and what the odds of being in a car crash on any particular day, and actually, by the way, encryption is safer than physical evidence, even if the chain of custody is completely uninterrupted and totally trustworthy. But yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens all the time. Evidence can be the bag just has to pop open. That's it. It's over. I mean, that doesn't mean they're not going to seal it and pretend like it didn't happen, but.
I think the problem here is with lawyers, because some lawyers are going to stand there like, how do we know that the blood draw that was done? I don't know why I sound like Matlock, but I don't know the blood draw.
No. I'll allow it.
Wasn't confused with bed number
Sustained.
8. Was the nurse? They were there having an affair with the doctor in room 12. Can you deny that? It's like what? I think the whole problem stems from lawyers
Right.
causing problems. The person comes unconscious. We do a tox screen. It's part of the medical records. We base our decisions on this.
Right.
It's
But you're
not-
not there to bust them. You're there to save them.
Right. Well, they have the medical records. The
Right,
tox
right.
screen came back. Oh, look, he has ecstasy and coke, and he has this, and he has alcohol. Yeah, he was partying.
Yeah.
Why do you need a cop involved besides Okay, well, one blood draw, you took it to the lab, very good. Like, he's not gonna sit there with pipettes and stuff, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, really, like 3/4 of this question is, were you okay with people refusing breathalyzers in the first place? Because this is basically, that's completely revoked now. Now, if they can do it unconscious, essentially, the Supreme Court has ruled that no, we get to measure how much drugs.
What if you're
Well,
semi-conscious?
there's a difference because my understanding, again, I am not a lawyer in any stretch of the imagination. My understanding on the breathalyzer refusal was you could refuse, in which case you could have your license revoked for refusing.
Right, and not in every state, but most states.
Right. But the knowledge you gain, the government couldn't gain any knowledge from a forced breathalyzer.
Right.
They could punish you for not doing the breathalyzer. I might need one. But they couldn't gain the knowledge.
Do have
now
one,
the
if anybody
argument
wants.
goes, but now we can gain the knowledge.
Yeah.
So now it's a question of, okay, we can take the blood draw. Oh, we also see you had pot? Well, your security clearance just got wiped. We also see you had, so what are you going to do with the knowledge that you're gaining?
Nice.
Here's the thing, the knowledge has to be put in context to whether or not the chemicals were causing altered mental status at the time. Pot can stay in the system for a few days. If I smoke a joint and I get pulled over 3 days later. And
It does on the driving side. It doesn't if the issue is if the issue is a security clearance and a federal requirement that you not have pot, period.
Right.
Then as soon as they see it, your security clearance is toast. Doesn't matter if it was being used to disclose information or anything. So now you're in a position where you couldn't. And yes, the other side of you goes, well, don't do something you're not supposed to do. But that's the global argument against the need for warrants in general. But that's not the system we live in.
Look, a state trooper said it very nicely to me. If someone's not operating a motor vehicle safely, they don't, look, for the most part, I don't think that cops and state troopers care if people drink or smoke pot and drive. I really don't care at the end.
Yeah, they do.
They said
Bunch
very
of
nicely.
busybodies.
They said very nicely, one state trooper said, if they're operating a motor vehicle unsafely, I'm going to pull them over.
Right.
If they smell like pot, I'm testing it for pot. If
Sure.
they smell like alcohol, I'm testing for alcohol.
Yeah.
So they don't care about if someone has a drink and drives. They care about unsafe operation of a
Yeah.
vehicle.
Well, now we're getting back to my point, which is that those laws aren't really there for the good cop, their good situation, where everyone's doing their part for society. Those laws are there for where the system goes haywire, either through a political process or through somebody being a bad actor.
Yeah, I mean, I would count. There are bad everybodies in the world. Are there bad?
For sure.
I think that's a very.
As a matter
very,
of science, there
very
are bad everybody.
small
Yes.
portion.
1 to 3% psychopaths. That's the percentage of the population. You can argue about whether it's 1
Well,
or
but-
3, but it's somewhere in there.
That's general population. Doesn't mean that even applies to specific areas. 'Cause
They love power, so they're attracted to power. So now, I will say, there's probably less psychopaths in the police forces more recently because they've been cracking down. They've been putting more rules in. There's cameras. There's more ways to go wrong. So it's actually less. They have less power than they ever had. So it's a less attractive job. But yeah, for sure.
Was there any
psychopaths are
truth to
attracted
that rumor that New York City had a maximum IQ for police officers?
power. What?
I assume not.
I swear I heard it.
You heard it here first, people. What?
This is like 5 years ago. They were declining.
possibly be real.
Yeah, I do remember it now that you mentioned it.
It was an actual thing?
Yeah, I don't know that there was truth to it, but I remember the.
Do you know
Yeah,
what the
I don't know if
ballpark
it's
number
true,
was?
but it struck me like, seriously? If you're too smart, you can't be a cop?
It's a variation on overqualified.
Matt
Yeah.
has left the building. I don't know, man. I didn't hear that. I can't verify it.
It was years ago. It's not something they just said on the news like last night.
No,
or
no, I
something,
believe you.
but-
Lee, I've always known you to be sincere. If you're saying this, you think it possibly, at least somebody told you it was true.
It was
thought
at least a
true.
rumor at some point, not too long ago.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's weird. No, the best I can do is that I know they test for mental illness for cops, for New York City cops, and for Nassau County cops. So, because I've heard about the processes.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
because those tests you sure can't study or.
Yeah.
Right away.
Well, it's the usual, the jails are full of psychopaths, but generally it's the lower half of the IQ curve also, because, not to say there aren't smart people in jail, but...
They weren't smart enough.
Dude, where you going? He left. We're going to be down to 0 people No, it's fine. I'm kidding, man. It's a stick.
You know, now that you mention it.
It was the first question. We can just move on.
All right.
All right. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like a definitive answer. I wasn't even planning on hitting you guys with this, but
Yeah, you were
you
just
mentioned
doing news, but I kind of just.
No. It's good. I like it though. It's good. If you have something to say about the news, and I hope if future guests, if you're watching this, jump in if I'm talking news and there's something that's interesting to you. So this one's going to be a little more controversial. So. Project Veritas released some video.
Sorry.
Both anonymous video. As Steve jumps back into the frame.
I'm sorry. Sorry, something came up.
So some video. No, it's fine.
I'm still here.
Anonymous video and also some sting videos. So the person didn't know they were being recorded of employees of Google who confirmed that the algorithm ML Fairness, which is actually a known Google algorithm, they've talked about it at length. It's in their docs. Is actually a politically slanted algorithm, which is targeting certain kinds of politics and not other certain kinds of politics. I don't even, of course, you have to be living under a rock to know that it wasn't the conservatives that said that people weren't playing fair with them. But I don't really care about that for this. I care about whether you have something the size of Google. Can it slant politics and tilt the field towards one party or the other, towards right or left, towards populist?
They engineer it completely.
Well, they didn't used to, for sure. I mean,
No,
there
they
was a
did.
point
They
at
didn't.
which-
But they're building platforms like what we're using, where they can entirely just engineer all that.
Yeah. Well, so it's a little disturbing because it's been casually denied in the past. Also, what's disturbing, there's two things also that are disturbing about this. One is the press isn't picking it up, the mainstream press. But there's plenty of confirmation out there. It happened. And the other one is that the video got like 1 million hits, and then YouTube took it down.
Who owns YouTube?
Yeah,
Google.
that would be Alphabet. So
Well, YouTube's been doing like sketchy things all over the place recently too, though.
So I mean, I don't really care about which politics it is. It just bothers me that this could happen. I'm kind of ashamed that we haven't been targeted here in the Technocrat Live because we're criticizing the technocrats. We're actually criticizing the process where a technical person who's at the top. We're all technocrats. Technocrat isn't necessarily a bad thing, but how you use it. If you use it to be a steward of other people and you do it poorly, messing with a political process is not good.
Look at Steven Crowder. Oh, sorry. Steven Crowder. He's a Republican YouTube personality.
Right.
He got his channel deleted based on like some edgy humor.
Right.
But if technocrats were on that level of popularity, yeah, there'd be issues taken upon that. It's just that it's not like people aren't like focusing all their energy into that. They're focusing on things that kind of more make them feel better and more comfortable.
All I've got is a hammer all I've got a hammer so everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
The technocrats have the ability to change the algorithms, but they can't get out there and say their own piece. They can't make their arguments as
And also,
eloquently.
and YouTube has like their algorithms
That's
too.
a shame,
But like,
hopefully we can help change that. With
but
the
YouTube, what they
shows
do
like
though
this.
is for every video they give it a rating behind the scenes. So you can basically get like shadow banned on YouTube because if you have profanity or such in your video, you can be like rated M or you can be rated T or whatever. And based on that is what audience will see your content. So you can just not be pushed because of just stuff that you don't have any control of.
Okay.
You got to ride the wave.
Yeah. I totally didn't see that argument coming. Good thinking, Steve. Do you have something else you want to
Yeah, I
add?
have a
or-
question. I get the
Oh, and
general.
by the way, I just want to say before I don't want to cut
Please
you
go,
off.
please go.
I want to put this out there.
Yeah.
So I have some left views. I have some right views. I work really hard to stay independent. I mean, of course, I have opinions. I'm not like a robot or something. But if you try to drag me to the left, I'm going to fight. If you try to drag me to the right, I'm going to fight. So fair warning. All right, go for it, man.
Well, first, I would just like to come out and say that I never voted in my life.
Yeah.
Nobody has motivated me to actually get up and vote. I'm kind of a troglodyte, and with respect to this panel, with their ability to.
I don't know what that word means. Troglodyte?
Oh, I
Troglodyte,
thought you
cave
meant
person.
respect.
I'm
Like a
a cave
caveman.
person compared to you guys in the sense of technology.
That's
So,
awesome.
So I'm not
You
really
used a
technocrat.
fancier word than I know to say that I'm fancier than you. Freaking rock and roll, man.
Exactly. So my question to you is, why is something like Google, it's like we're having a conversation about a private company as if though they're supposed to be this high ethical standard, independent kind of not
Yeah,
taking
At
sides,
one time-
like neutrality. It's
At one
like-
time, their slogan was "Do no evil," right?
Yes.
What's
yes,
evil
which
about
they have
having an
revoked
opinion?
quietly.
Exactly.
Well,
So,
right, and
yeah,
I
hey,
know where
warned
you're
you.
coming from. And there's,
It's not evil to have an opinion.
right. No, it's not, and it's not even evil for a company to have an opinion. The problem is, you've got, and I've got like this 95-5 fight in my brain. 95% of me says Facebook and Google and YouTube, even though they're Google, whatever, can do whatever the fuck they want because they're a private company.
Yeah.
The problem is.
Oh, by the way, we curse you if you haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
That's
The
fine. Continue.
problem
Enter the
is
MA YouTube section.
They've also become. Hey, I just got you an M rating on YouTube. They've become the town square.
Yes.
Facebook has become the de facto town square.
Right. Full of mobs
Google-
and people shouting and
But
throwing
the problem
rocks.
is the town square is protected. The whole idea of the first is that you should be able to get up and shout in the town square whatever lunatic, fringe, dumbass idea you
Yeah.
want to espouse. You're protected from the government stopping you,
Yeah.
not from Google, not from Facebook, not from YouTube,
Or your employer.
or your employer. But if these platforms have become the town square, that's where that 5% of my brain goes.
You know, the 5% of your brain is telling you something important. So the real thing here is, I think that the big media companies, and this is something that's reflected in a bill that just came up, which I mentioned last episode, but it's just a bill right now that's on the floor. They haven't actually. I don't even think they brought it. It's not even possible to bring it to vote yet. So
the
it's
bill on
Schoolhouse
Capitol
Rock
Hill?
thing, yeah, exactly.
yeah. I just don't.
Sitting on the steps of
Capitol
Capitol
Hill.
Hill.
Everyone, come on.
I'm being intentionally vague. So, but I think the limit was for 300 million global users and 100 million American users, and like 300 million. No, it's $300 million globally revenue, and then 50 million and 100 million. There were some limits as to what defined a big tech company. So that's it. And the idea was to require them to choose one. And when I say choose one, I'm talking about, are they the soapbox, or are they or are they the lunatic onic? And you can't be both. You're a
you have
platform,
problem where they've been
or you're
given some-
editorializing.
Right.
You're not
They've
both.
been given some latitude. They've been given some latitude as a platform, not a producer.
Right. That's
where
it.
they're
Thank you.
not. They don't have liability for some of the content on the platform
Right.
because they're a platform.
Right.
But once they start editorializing, now they become a producer.
Right.
And now the argument is they should lose that, and this has got a double-edged sword, but the argument
Right.
is they should lose that free pass for being a platform.
Right.
But if you're going to take it away, now they're scared about the content.
Right.
Because now they can't say, oh, no, we're a platform, it's not our fault, because now you can go after them.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why they want to take that away.
Right.
But if they need to be a platform because it's,
Well,
it's
yeah.
the network effect.
I mean,
They are the town
I
square.
sympathize with that they're upset, and I realize that they openly. It's not like they hide that they lean towards one direction
Right.
politically. I mean, it's got to be horrible to be sitting in the driver's seat of a car while it mows down school children, because I'm sure that's how they see it, right? But at the same time, it was never the driver's seat, right?
Where do you get your analogy? Holy shit.
Don't worry,
Anal
I'll
allergy.
I think
That's
there's
where
a
they come
store 2 blocks down. Or
Well,
one
no,
block
no,
over.
no. So actually, it wasn't.
a couple bottles
let
right
me
there.
actually clarify
I
that.
assume
So
that's a self-driving car. Right?
this is a self-driving car reference, and the reason I brought that is because it's actually the same problem in a way, right? Oh, we wrote the algorithms, but we're not responsible for them. The self-driving car companies want to be, oh, you have to put one finger on the wheel because then legally, Tesla or GM or whoever isn't responsible. So that's what YouTube is. Yeah, sorry, I could have skipped the school children part. I could have made it nuns or something. But
None
like
was driving, or
no, just walking around.
And does it have to be a finger?
Do you call a group of nuns a flock? I'm not sure. Anyway, so
Jeez.
you put
I was gonna say Jesus, but that's not the right response to that.
the only thing if that happens, the only thing you can yell is Jesus.
Oh boy.
But if you have to put one finger on the wheel to show that you're responsible, but you're not really. I mean, you're either engaged, looking around, watching, at 2 hands of the wheel in this position, or
You're not.
You're in someone else-
Word, you got one finger on the wheel.
You're in someone else's
Weights
playgrounds.
on Amazon. You got tied on the wheel, so it'll leave you alone.
The shake weight while driving.
Doing porn,
Like-
shake weight while driving.
Like you're in someone else's playground, using someone else's toys, trying to get benefit to yourself.
Count inside the van while it's driving you home. Yeah.
The technology companies also have a problem that we're looking at it sitting in arguably one of the freest countries in the world.
Right.
You know, with all these amendments, and we can argue about how the first protects this and the second protects that, and blah, blah. That same technology company has to play in France and in Italy. And I'm not
Agreed.
saying these aren't free countries, but they all have different legal derivations, different
Agreed.
push down. Even in the UK, very different fundamental law set than we have here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they've got, that platform has to react to the laws as they exist in each of these countries.
Economy of scale, including in legal proceedings,
Yeah.
is the best argument for globalism, by far. It is the main and primary and best argument for
Well,
globalism.
but you still have individual.
And a global set of rules for everybody
No,
to
thank
simplify
you.
things.
No, thank you.
No, I agree. But
The
cost is too high.
I spent today reading GDPR
What?
amendments. I
What?
do not want globalism.
what?
No, I know. It's like no one's talking about the individual person becoming this part of this mob and not thinking for themselves. It's like,
Agreed.
well, Google has this opinion, and it's gonna like, what happened to just thinking for yourself, getting some facts? Like, who cares what Google thinks? Who cares what the New York Times thinks? Like, let's think as individual
I
people.
I completely agree with
wouldn't
him. I'm
mind
just
if
gonna
Google
I'm gonna
was
go
out
along with whatever
there-
he says.
Well, I wouldn't mind
Right.
if Google was out there
Have you
saying,
caught that?
this is what we think.
That's
I-
fine.
Yeah.
The problem is when they start shutting
Flying
down
someone else's flag. That's the problem.
platform somewhere else. When they start
Yeah.
saying, this is what we think, and we're not gonna show you a conflicting opinion. That's when it becomes a problem.
So, but okay, but we're
No, and it's still a private company, and they're still
Yeah,
at
yeah.
95% of it, so they can do whatever the fuck they want.
you know,
But it's Google, it's Facebook, it's where
Who
you're
cares?
going to go. What are you gonna go to the library and look it up on the Dewey
yeah,
Decimal System?
yes.
I mean, good luck. Encyclopedia
Yeah.
Britannica hasn't been
Yeah,
updated in a while.
because people are fucking lazy nowadays. That's the whole
There's-
problem.
Well, actually, that's
the
well,
network
no,
effect,
you know
though.
what? That's partly good coders are lazy. This is part of the
Well,
technocracy.
good coders are lazy.
Right.
Oh,
Technocracy rewards laziness. You want to automate everything, and because if you don't, at some point you fall behind, and things start spiraling, and you get out of control. And like, I still do my checkbook by hand. It's a nightmare. It's a
Is it
total
still
nightmare.
checkbook?
But
Yeah. I still balance my checkbook by hand, and it costs me time. I mean, it's a problem. I like using the mail because I know there's legal protections with it, but it's not free. It's costing me a lot of time. Some people just use their bank to do auto pay and everything, and it just keeps track of it for them, and they don't have to do anything. So I'm at a disadvantage, and so things like that, as they add up over time, eventually you get to the point where you can't even compete anymore, and you're on the outside looking in. So yeah, absolutely, the technocracy reinforces laziness. People are lazy because they have to be.
They don't know. Well, you know what? I've come to a conclusion that, laziness could be passive or laziness could be active. So people who can't wait online or people who are impatient, it's a type of laziness because they can't exercise self-control.
Yeah.
So if someone really lives their life in this way where they have to get their information from this source and they will just glue to that source and doesn't know how to do research or look into things for themselves, they just become part of these like little, these little sheep just jumping around.
Yeah,
I mean, it's,
so there's some of that for sure. There's definitely people who are they're not making an effort. They don't have the tools. They just, they're about as smart as wet paint drying.
have you guys heard of snow
But-
plowing? Not the actual car with the, not the snow to the side.
Tell me about this alien
I'm-
technology.
I'm-
What are you talking
Have
about?
you guys
I'm
heard
not
of
sure
snow
I
plowing?
want to know.
yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna make
No, no,
assumption.
no.
Also, I'd
known
I'd
him
also like to
for
point out we're
40
not
years.
X here.
I'm
We're
a
not
little
rated
worried
X.
about what definition he's going to provide.
If Paul had asked me that question, I would not answer. But
Don't worry. It's not like docking. Don't worry. This is a little different. Okay. So snow plowing
Yikes.
is when parents show up with their kids for job interviews, and mom sits there and fills out their job application. And the parents call up the boss and say, my child's been working here for 10 years and they need a raise because of X, Y, Z. this really irks me, and I think this kind of ties into this whole where we are with technology, getting information, and being lazy.
I have heard
Yeah,
of this.
that's
I just
what
didn't
I
know
said.
that that's what it was called. Yes.
Snowplow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That would
I'm always learning.
that applicant would not
Now you are
hire.
too. You can't ever unknow that.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. They could be the best employee in the world. If their parent calls me, I'll be like, Bob, you do a great job. We love you here, but you're fired. Your mom just called. I'm sorry. We gotta let you go. We're not compatible.
It's a good shtick in movies, but not so much in real life.
No, so this ties it. I think the whole society, we have this systemic illness happening where we as individuals are not being motivated. We're sort of being funneled into this mass thinking, kind of like gun control.
Yeah.
Well,
Everyone's like, you
The
know,
funneling is being done to protect us.
right, to protect us.
And
but-
that's one of the worst reasons, that's one of the worst answers. And this is where globalism is not a good thing, because this is where and I think we had this conversation when I was on last time, this is one of the fundamental differences of our entire rights system in this country versus others, that we don't get our rights from the government.
So wait, check this out. I'm going to tie this right back into democracy. So, in my opinion, a rough consensus, a roughly positive consensus, in other words, a majority, but barely, is worth 1,000 times a quorum that's forced from up high, and that's the premise of democracy itself. So
I don't think so.
I think so. I think it's that people, even if they don't necessarily, if they can't logically articulate the problems, that they are capable. And I'm not saying that democracy is foolproof, and I'm not saying it can't be corrupt, and I'm not saying a society can't degrade over time. These are all problems. See, my view is the government can go and just explode.
Like that.
Just like that.
Exactly like that.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Right? Totally innocent. Nobody even thinks they're doing it. They think they're helping. They go to reach for the glass and they knock it over. Right?
Or you just completely break it altogether.
But
Right.
I think it's more of a corruption of the English language. Democracy is just a system of voting people into office.
Right. I'm also referring to republics. I mentioned that too on your show, and you were like, democracy? I'm talking about republics too, and including that.
Yeah, no, I didn't ask.
Yeah.
No, but the English language is an interesting point, because if we can't even agree on what a frickin' word means, how are we supposed to have a conversation?
Yeah.
How are we supposed to
Well,
discuss
well,
something
and-
that is, the devil is in the details. We
So-
agree on 99.9% of the stuff. It's that 0.01% that we're trying to discuss with words that we can't even agree on the meaning. So that's a very...
I think it's
the
even more
technocracy is
scary than
pushing
that.
ahead, and also we get this situation where we get vapor lock, and we just can't even describe something because there's no word for it.
I think it's even more darker than that, that 0.01% versus 99%. I think in that 99% chunk, I think maybe like 99% of that 99% chunk, we're having a conversation, we're both using a word, and that word means something different to each of us, but we assume it means the same thing in our conversation to the other person. We assume when we have these talks that we're all on the same page.
Well, but I like to think, and I could certainly be wrong, but that we forget how much we do all agree on certain things. And I don't mean the things that we're sitting around going, no, we don't agree, because I think the things where we at all think we disagree are much smaller, because we don't talk about the things that we all agree about. But I think we all agree that I probably shouldn't be stabbed when I walk out the door later, or, I shouldn't have to worry about, it's things that are so obvious that we don't think about them. We all agree on these things.
Right, but it's the same
we
thing.
agree there shouldn't be.
Well, this is something we started talking
people
about
walking down the street tomorrow shooting other people.
This is something we've been talking about on your show, like with my suggestions, we really should, this is one of the reasons it's important to sunset laws, not necessarily because we don't agree that murder is bad, but because it's good if once in a while we re-examine murder and remember why it's bad. We're only talking about the stuff at the periphery. We're talking about the stuff right at the edge of the debate, and we're not talking about the stuff underneath the foundations.
Right.
And that's important to making decisions. You know, and unfortunately, people are busy. They don't have time to explore it, so everyone just constantly looks at that periphery and they don't look at the underlying
Well,
fundamentals.
that's where the disagreement is. It's only fun to have a conversation about stuff you disagree about. Otherwise, you're just kind of.
Right,
You know.
but I think the danger is when we agree.
Well, I mean, the purge would be fun.
I think the danger is when we agree, but we have different concepts in our head.
Yeah.
We all agree that cup is green because we've been taught that it's green, but we don't know if we see the same color.
Yeah, I forgot which
You know what
philosopher touched upon that.
You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, how do I know that if I could have your eyes or your brain or whichever part you want to interpret as interpreting color, I might look through your eyes and say that's red.
Right, exactly.
Even though it's green,
Exactly.
we both would agree it's green.
Yeah.
But my idea of green and your idea of green are very different green.
Exactly.
I mean, if you go down that road, there's also the perception, like among the same thing, where the glass doesn't even have a color, and our perceptions just give it a color based on lighting or whatever. Like same
We're
thing.
just lumping it into a pile of things with colors because
Yeah.
it's easier for us to deal with it.
Yeah, like there was a study done regarding a brown table, right? Like there's a concept behind it that like maybe like a man in the machine, aka God, gave us like the perspective that this table's brown. Other things saying we don't know what brown is. What if it's this lighting? What the lights are off over in a different situation? We don't truly know what it is. That kind of also factors into it. You don't know what perspective is coming from that too.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Perception is reality.
Well, that's it right there.
Pass it around, guys. Pass it around.
It's
I think
Nice.
we just lit the intellectual spliff.
Okay, apparently Lee is the guru on the hill. If you can take that as shtick and just give us a one-liner at the end of every debate, that'd be perfect.
Just to put a bow on this, yeah, the First Amendment is the freedom of speech, but it's not coincidental. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. So if you don't like what the first person says.
George Carlin has several good bits on that, by
But
the
in
way.
the case of all of the amendments, none of them give us a right.
Well, the rights
There are
come.
no rights.
The rights come from God, according to the Constitution. That's
No,
the legal
there-
foundation of them.
You can't name me one human right. Name me one human right.
Yes, I can.
Go, name me one.
Okay. So I think we have a right to property, and this is based on the stuff that I did with Sivgene. And the reason I think that we have a right to property is because it's animals just display behavioral characteristics of territory, and actually human beings retain the knowledge of territory over an extended period of time, which is something that's not present in any other animal. So I think that
Never see a
behavioral
salmon swim
differentiation.
upstream.
That's not right.
Sure, why not?
That's not right. Right. Human rights do not exist by definition.
Well,
They
okay.
cannot exist.
It's a new thing. I would understand why you were skeptical on it, but
Yeah.
I think it's true.
Oh, so when a government decides to build a highway and demolish someone's house, where does that person's right go?
Well, so you
Eminent
have,
domain, yeah.
yeah, of course, you know.
So,
But
so we agree that their right could be revoked.
well, this is the problem of the tragedy of the commons, right? So we have the tragedy of the commons where, you know, we have a resource that's limited, and of course, the tragedy of the commons is just going to become more and more prevalent as time goes on, and as resources become scarce and need to be shared more often. So if you can't share resources, at some point you're essentially sentencing the people who are start off at a lower point in the totem pole or have a starting line further back to agony or death, right? Because they can't share in the resources. You know, like overfishing the ocean is the easiest example. But eminent domain is another case of that too. I mean, roads benefit everybody. Everybody ends up having lower prices on all their goods because of roads.
It's not right.
The question is, well, I mean, do you have a right to exist?
No,
Interesting.
I don't
Well,
have a right to exist.
Actually, based
I
on
can-
my argument, actually, you wouldn't because animals, you know, exist. They
I don't
They don't
have-
do anything special to exist. They just existed one day and then they stop existing one day.
I don't have a right to exist. I could exist to the best of my abilities,
Right.
but it's not an inherent right. We don't have rights.
No, I
There's,
would.
there's no such
I
thing
mean,
as
this,
rights.
this is going back to the definition of terms again, right? But I think you could say you have rights that society can revoke. We can put somebody in jail. We can.
Then it's
we
not a
can
right.
Commit somebody to death.
We're talking human rights. I mean, I'm going
when you say
basic
right, you are
human
talking
rights,
So-
not legal rights. I'm talking
A
human rights.
truly inalienable right. There
Correct.
is no way to alienate it.
Correct.
Not through court. Not
Nope.
through No.
Does not
couldn't.
exist.
What?
Does not exist.
I can walk over and kill you right now.
Yes, you can.
That ends
Please
your
don't.
Right.
Come on, people.
Oh, come on.
Wait till the
where are
end,
cameras?
and then we'll
I-
have a full
so
show,
there's
and then
no
there's
right.
fireworks at the
But
end.
I'm just saying we
But
just
that doesn't
the
mean
rights
you
don't
therefore
exist.
throw the framework of rights out.
I don't really
You
think
have
they kill each
to
other.
take that step back and go, well, okay,
It's
but within the
things we agree
framework
upon.
that we still have to kind of all agree that we're gonna
Or, well,
abide by some
That's
laws.
fine. It's a nice,
Aha.
pleasant fiction that we could all agree to, but it's not human rights. I think we should get the definitions clear. There's no such thing as human rights. Period.
Fine.
They don't exist. We could
I-
agree to be nice to each other. We agree that if you kill someone, you go to jail. We agree we shouldn't drink and drive. We agree to this. We agree to that. We enforce these laws, but they're not
Right.
rights.
do you well here? Let's
Well, or you,
allow
or
me
you
to,
say
allow
they
me to
are,
be
and you just change
pragmatist.
your definition of right.
Allow me to be pragmatist. So I can't. I have to sit down and I will work on an eminent. I'll work on a written eminent domain argument, counter argument for you, but I can't do
Please.
it now because
No, no,
it's going to be.
okay.
It's a complicated topic. There's a lot of little details. There's a lot of little winding paths we can go down.
Yeah.
But
Then
I'd like to get to item number 3.
got it. Have we gotten to 2 yet?
yeah, no, this was
I
two.
think
We
this was
finished
Oh,
two.
me too. Okay. all right.
And the funny thing is, these are just the news items. The questions are way deeper. So this is going to be interesting. Well, this one's all right. Let's go to news, and then we'll. I'll skip what I was going to say because I want to. It's not my show. It's your show. So I want you guys to have
We
a
know,
chance
we've
to have
taken it
your
over,
say.
don't worry.
Yeah. No.
We've commandeered this exact
Legit,
platform.
I don't have any rights. So. So
No, you have
Bitcoin.
plenty of rights. I'm just saying they don't exist. That's all.
No. That's. And we're probably gonna come back to this a little bit, but there's actually a question where it will naturally lead back to the same
Got it.
discussion.
Right.
So, Bitcoin is almost hit 14,000.
$13,818.26.
What is it right now?
13,000. Hold on.
Oh, it's back up again.
No, it was $13,818.26
Right, so
at its peak.
That's a peak. So a lot of people
right
were
now
wondering-
it is at 11,367.
So a lot of people were wondering why that happened. Like, why all of a sudden is this happening?
Facebook.
Because- no, I don't think so.
The Facebook coin.
Yeah, I don't.
It
Think that's
generates hype. Any hype in like the crypto space is like directly affects.
that's the common
Bitcoin.
knowledge that people are saying that it's a Facebook coin, but the Facebook coin is just really a gift card. Like talking about it from a technical standpoint, understanding money supplies and deflation and how the technicals that they released. Of course, we don't know everything because it's Facebook's thing, right? They're being very technocrat about it. It's our thing. Blah, blah, blah. It's a gift card. That's what the Facebook money is going to be, which means it's valuable in Facebook properties, and that's it. It's a company store. It's just a company store all over again. So, yes, of course, markets can move on that, and you'd be right, but that doesn't mean that it was an informed decision. What I've heard, and it seems credible to me, is it was actually a short squeeze. So a bunch of people were short Bitcoin in the 8,000, 9,000 range, and they got jacked. They basically had to cover their shorts, and it created this run, which kind of makes sense with how the chart looks. But that's very interesting because you don't hear about too many short squeezes in markets these days. Do with that what you will. Does anybody else have any theories other than Facebook and a short squeeze on why that happened? Want to chime in? Okay. You can always chime in later.
That was the fastest question.
Yeah, it was.
Unless you want to take time.
Well,
to-
you know what? You're just like you're neck deep in Bitcoin, or you're like, what? And so I've been both. So.
Yeah.
Unless you want to explain to the troglodyte what Bitcoin is. If you have time for that, you can
yeah.
explain it because I don't.
I can give it a minute. What do you guys think? Give it a minute. Sure. So Bitcoin is it's essentially a precious number hidden in a secret ledger. So yeah. So what you're doing is
Pretend I'm 5 years old, please.
which
Which is kind of close to my emotional age.
Do you know what asymmetry means, right? Where you have something where it's so the two sides are not equal, right? That's essentially what. So in algorithms, asymmetry usually means, not always, but usually means CPU load. And what it means is you have a heavy CPU load on one side and a light CPU load on the other side. So this is used all the time in media and compression algorithms. So if you want a video to be able to play on any old junk hardware, you may spend extra CPU compiling the video so that it plays very easily. But it's also very small, so it uses very little bandwidth. It's kind of like a choose two out of three kind of scenario. So that asymmetry is used in conjunction with a peer-to-peer network to generate bitcoins right? You know how a peer-to-peer network works, where
So,
everyone.
topic number 4 is.
All right, wait a minute. I think you're still way too.
Yeah, you need to bring it down a few
way
notches.
weeds. Like,
Okay.
when you say explain Bitcoin, you mean
Like
what is Bitcoin?
What is it?
All right.
Okay.
We come way out.
All right.
It's a-
Well, why don't we
it's a
give this a
currency.
stab?
Let's dial it back a bunch.
In essence, it's a because I'm not in it, so let me take a swipe at this.
Sure. And perfect. Thank you.
It's a currency like pound, like lira, like dollar, like whatever. In
Okay.
essence, except it's not governmentally driven. It is
Okay.
driven by a bunch of people that say, "Look, I've got 5 Bitcoin. How much do you want to pay me for a Bitcoin?" And the
Okay.
next guy goes, "Oh, that sounded like a good idea. How about I pay you 8 Bitcoin?" Now the problem is, where do these Bitcoins come from? I mean, in theory, we know we went off the gold standard a billion years ago, but let's say the dollar was based on gold and the
Right.
pound was based on sterling, etc. The reason you can't just run around and open up your wallet and stick free Bitcoins in it and then go buy stuff with them is to get a Bitcoin or a fraction thereof. You either have to buy it from somebody.
Well, one Bitcoin
Or
is mined
you-
at a time, but yeah,
right,
yeah.
or you
But most people trade in
mine
fractions
it.
now.
Okay, I didn't realize you mined them one at a time.
Yeah.
Or you mine it, which the act of mining it, it's a good analogy. You know, if you want gold, go dig a hole, and occasionally you'll find
You throw money in a hole
some-
until you
well,
get gold
yeah,
out of it.
Right, but you'll find some gold, but it takes a lot of work, and then you get something valuable. You can basically run a computer program that occasionally will spit you back a Bitcoin based on a whole lot of computational math and a shared ledger that makes sure people aren't faking it.
Here,
Basically, your computer solves math problems to give you Bitcoin. That's kind of how, very basically.
Remember when you
How it
solved math
works.
problems
So-
and your teacher
Yeah.
gave you a
Yeah, yeah.
star? It's the same thing except the computer's solving them now.
Yeah.
And you get the star.
And that's why the industry, when you're buying graphics cards and stuff, it was like all jacked up. People were buying them in bulk because
Still
that could
is.
give them.
Still is.
Is it? But it's not as bad as it
So
was.
it's kind of like them.
Yeah, well,
using
when,
your
when we're at the,
hardware.
it'll probably be bad
Well,
again. We're at the
no,
peak.
the Bitcoin
Yeah.
miners are using their own. There's not a
Right, right.
nefarious kind of, there might be as well, but I mean, some of the Bitcoin mining,
Got it.
when we talk about a Bitcoin mining facility, we don't mean, a room or a couple computers. We're talking about data center size warehouses that are just mining Bitcoin.
And there's a fixed amount of Bitcoin out there. That's like what kind of runs the entire market. It's like kind of like how our currency is backed by gold. Bitcoin is more along the lines of like it's in an international currency. There's no like tax on trading with it. No, you have all the governments trying to make laws against it. Like New York is pretty strict.
Yeah,
But with
the strictest probably.
yeah, but with Bitcoin, the reason why it has that value is because when all of them are mined, they're all mined. That's it. There's not going to be more made or anything. There's a fixed amount that can be in circulation, and more are being added every day.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty trippy.
Yeah.
It's
Like-
very trippy.
That's really.
It is. It is not just trippy. In my opinion, the reason I invested in it is, and people will argue with me, this is the answer to several problems, and we just replaced other monies.
Nice.
You know.
You had me at no
now,
taxes.
I will
Yeah.
say,
Well,
I
be-
will say that if there's no internet, there's no Bitcoin for sure. You
Well,
know.
and
So,
also, if you forget,
you know,
if
you're
you
still-
lose your
you're still
flash
better
drive, you
off
don't have it
walking
either.
around with gold in your pocket when all the electricity's off.
Aside from Bitcoin, there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of other coin.
There's thousands.
Litecoin, Ethereum.
There were thousands 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There's tens of thousands now.
Yeah,
and they
but-
all have varying prices.
Yep.
But then you have a coin called Ripple, which is kind of which is established in the UK, and that's meant to kind of circumvent banks, even though it was kind of I believe it was created by a bank. If any of you could say.
Sounds
Yes, it is.
familiar.
Yes, it is
For-
a banking consortium. yes.
Exactly. So, but what a lot of people do also is they mine what's called altcoins, which are coins alternative to Bitcoin, and then they convert it over to Bitcoin, which is a more
So-
efficient
so
process.
just to put things in perspective, in the early days of Bitcoin, knowing how open source worked was really useful. It's still useful now, but it was extra useful back then. You know, like not talking about how the code works, how the society works, because people were starting. Basically, what people did is because it's under the GPL Bitcoin, they would just literally take the Bitcoin code, copy it, change the name and the port, and I have another coin. And that's actually how Litecoin got started. That was like one of the first ones. So I don't know if it might have been the first one. I'm not sure about that, but.
But I mean, all of these have value only to the degree that somebody is willing
Yes.
to trade something else of value for it.
So-
No different than any other
Right,
currency
right,
in
right,
essence.
okay.
So here's the secret is that's the thing about all money,
All
Yeah,
money
right.
is
No
equal.
different- exactly.
The real conclusion that I came to from all this is not that Bitcoin is like, oh, well, it's not backed by it, it doesn't mean anything. I actually came to realize that, oh, none of it means anything.
Well, but all
That was
currency,
like-
all currency is backed by whether or not other people are willing to give you something in exchange for it. Everyone will do that for the U.S. dollar forever. Everyone will do that for the pound sterling forever. Everyone will do that for the lira forever. The problem with Bitcoin is there are tens of thousands of them. Not Bitcoins, but tens of thousands of parallel
Cryptocurrencies.
Right.
Cryptocurrencies.
Right.
So, in an attempt to protect us, there's the government's problem. Oh, you might invest in this and piss away your life savings, and then nobody
Oh,
wants
yeah.
Bitcoin ananymore.
Yeah, and
Welcome to the
in
stock
fairness,
market.
some of those altcoins, man, they are freaking shady. You know.
Oh,
some of
yeah.
them. Just because
Right.
Bitcoin has all the code out there and the entire blockchain is there, and you can use tools to look at every single bit of the blockchain.
Which is the part I don't get about all the intraceability of Bitcoin and its anonymousness.
Yeah.
It's all in the blockchain.
I pay my taxes. They're going to get caught.
It's all in
It's just a matter of
Yeah.
processing power. Anonymity is a strategy, and it's a temporary strategy at best. They're going to get caught.
Yeah, but how does anyone claim this is more anonymous than a suitcase full of 20s?
It's not. Actually, suitcase full of 20s is more anonymous.
Significantly.
Unless the government's onto you and they're marked, you know, and they or
That's
sequential or
different. Yeah,
something.
yeah, but that-
movie
that-
stuff.
That presumes precognition.
Why are you giving me the
Not
nod
later.
for sequential marked bills?
You see
Never
that
mind,
one
it's awesome.
experience?
Let's leave
I
the
didn't
mysterious.
check the serial
Oh,
numbers. Do these
Yes.
have serial numbers?
I don't know, but they're already off Amazon.
They do not have serial numbers.
Yes.
But yeah, but what you were saying with like shady coins, like if, for example, look at Dogecoin, right?
Yeah.
Like Dogecoin, it tripled in value like since it like was
Yeah.
kind of conceived, but like you have it sponsoring NASCAR. Like they legitimately bought like ad space on NASCAR vehicles and put a picture of Doge, the Shiba Inu dog, on
Right.
the car.
Hey,
Well,
I put $10 into it. I figure, what the hell?
Same, I
All
tripled
you
mine.
coins out there want to sponsor a physician, you could contact me on the link below. Okay.
Just get a giant Bitcoin logo tattooed on your neck.
The first Bitcoin transaction.
I have a Bitcoin address on my site.
The first Bitcoin transaction.
Yeah.
10,000
Bitcoins for pizza.
Right.
One pizza, 10,000 Bitcoins. If that pizza guy held onto those Bitcoins, he would be like Warren Buffett.
Over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Well, that price, the $11,000, that's
Yeah.
per Bitcoin.
Yes.
Wow.
But
10,000
most people have
Bitcoin for
pieces.
You got to understand.
Most expensive pizza you'll ever order.
When my wife and I went scuba diving in the Caribbean, we met
Laugh with
someone.
me.
we met someone whose job was, I wake up in the morning, I set the interest rate for my country. And I asked him, please explain to me what money is, because I don't get it. And he couldn't explain it to the degree where I understand. I still don't understand what money is, where it comes from. So Bitcoin, dollar, sterling, whatever. Someone with a machine cranks things out.
Here's
we agree to,
here's
amount to
here's
something.
the I love your why questions. They're spectacular, and there's actually an answer. My superpower is answering rhetorical questions, by the way. And the answer is it comes from human behavior. It's another one of those human behaviors.
Oh,
Currency is a human behavior that's not shared in the animal kingdom. So that's something that we do that animals don't.
Squirrel collected
No, wait.
They don't- but they
Animal
don't
Kingdom has
trade them.
currency.
No, they don't trade.
What?
Animal Kingdom has currency.
The animal kingdom does not have currency as we know it.
No, but they know how to exchange products for services.
Yeah, you guys had that whole bit on your show about it, didn't you? With the
no,
the
you're
monkeys
talking
and
about
quarters.
The capuchin monkeys?
Yeah.
Yeah, the monkey prostitution.
The monkey
Yeah.
prostitution,
Well, first of all, they had to be. So first of all, any example where animals have to be taught how to do something by humans is out. Because humans taught them how to do that. That wasn't the animals that really originated. There's all these videos that I love it. Every once in a while, somebody will send me a picture of a dolphin and a dog, or a deer and a moose, or and
I'm just
there's always
putting it out
people
there. If somebody
involved.
sends me that picture, I don't love it. Okay, so
Yeah. Well, it's cute, but I mean, I'm like, obviously the person put them up to it, right? You know, because that's what happens. Now, occasionally, you'll have cases where animals will emulate a behavior that they have, that they show for their family to other animals, incidentally, but I haven't been convinced. I haven't seen the smoking gun. Probably the best case I've seen is of an orca. Of a whale saving a seal from an orca. That was probably the best animal altruism case I've seen, because there was really no indication there was any human interference whatsoever.
That's as
When
good as it
the
gets.
video
in the
was
end.
over, did the whale eat the seal?
I don't know. Who knows what happened when the video shut off, right? So, yeah. Well, whales they can't. They have they can only have the fuzzy teeth that eat krill. I forget the name of them are. But yeah. So anyway,
Fuzzy teeth is a good. Is a great
I have a lot of things to send you after the show.
You can go look up fuzzyteeth.com.
I'm not just kind of like I'm not just riffing and being crazy on this. The thing is I've written up stuff on it, but the problem is it was over the course of 10 years, at least 12 articles a year for a decade. So we're talking about hundreds of articles, and I just don't remember all the details.
And
But-
search
would
never
actually,
works.
I would actually pay admission to spend a day in your brain.
I spent a mission to not do that. That sounds like that sounds horrific.
It's like
Imagine being
Okay.
trapped in
topic
the.
number 4.
Topic number 4. So this is actually an old one. I just wanted to bring it up because it's an oldie but a goodie. It's actually a news item from 2 years ago. 2017, Diebold exposed USB ports where actually could be used to throw a USB stick in. If you took a USB stick and you wrote the right code and you put it on the USB stick and you plug it into an exposed USB stick, exposed USB port on the ATM machine, it would literally dump all of its cash onto the floor. So it was a good example of just a massive security flaw with, and I just wanted to bring it up, kind of use as an archetype because we might need it later. But if anybody had anything to say about that, probably not, right?
Yeah, damn it! I should have gone to programming. That's what I'm saying.
This is it. You know what? I mean,
It's okay. I'm not in it either, so we're good. We're in the same boat together.
Code is leverage, and all you have to do is, if you give me a place to stand, I can move the earth. That was Archimedes that said that. So, yeah, sorry, my brain again. I'm exposing it to my brain.
That's a really interesting quote.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
He said what?
Archimedes
I
said,
feel like I'm on Tails.
if you gave me a place to stand, I could move the earth.
Yep.
If he had, in other words, he
Really
just
long
needs a
stick and
lever. He's strong enough to move anything if you just give him a place to stand.
That's deep, man.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is.
That's like bong deep. Really deep, man.
I hope I haven't ruined anyone's day with that quote.
No.
So I just want to say I'm actually going to be on Tales from the Bottom of the Ocean, which is a philosophy podcast with Austin and Mike on the 3rd on this channel on Area 22. So tune back in on the 3rd, and I'll be here at 6, I think it is.
6 o'clock on Wednesdays. Yeah.
6 o'clock on Wednesdays. Thanks a lot. Also, Lee and I have just begun a project, and it's worth mentioning. Normally, I don't like to announce things when we don't have any kind of URL or any place to send anyone, but it's great news, and I'm really excited. I love the Icon Science Fiction Festival, and it's a local science fiction festival that's been here a lot longer than most of the other cons that people know about. And we're actually going to start a show called the Unconventional Show for Icon. So it's
They
gonna
haven't
be
been
a
at Icon
big thing
before.
to start with. Well, Icon's been out of service for a few years.
Yeah, no.
and,
When I was in high school, there was this anime club, and they used to go to the Javits Center for Icon.
right. So that's
It's still early in development, but we hope to kick something off soon.
right. So we're working on it. No promises for anything, but this is really great. I'm really excited about this.
It's nice to be trying to do something again.
I want to see science fiction flourish on the island, and there's lots of other things, panels, LARPing, gaming, all kinds of things that Icon did, and this is kind of a way to bridge that meat space world and the virtual world, so that people can stay in touch with Icon and see what's happening while in between events. So
May I make a comment about Icon?
sure.
So, like I said, I'm not too deep into things. However, I sat on a panel Icon, and I really, it has science fiction, but it has a lot of people who are, they have a lot of scientists.
And fantasy too.
Excuse me?
And fantasy too.
A lot of fantasies. I saw some of those costumes, yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is I got my wife one too. But the thing is, it's like, you know what, it really, I encourage all people who consider them scientists, even myself as a physician scientist, people who are into physics, to really go, because it really sparks the imagination. I think icon's a wonderful thing to keep the brain alive and keep the brain healthy. It's not just for, because some people look at it as, oh, a bunch of people dressing up, or a bunch of, people, some science fiction geeks and stuff like that. I don't think so. I think it's a lot deeper than that. The speakers are very intelligent. There's a lot of great guest speakers, scientists. What was the name of the gentleman that I drove from the airport?
Is that Mark Millis, I think.
Yeah,
He worked
yeah.
for NASA.
Yeah. So there's a lot of scientific brains that actually participate in this. So anyone who has an interest in science, I highly recommend Icon, just to keep that spark, that love of science alive, that we had when we were students and before we got jaded. I think I'm going too deep into my own personal thing right now. I'm gonna withdraw for a second.
No, that's cool. That was
It was very good.
yeah. Well, no, I mean, so I just want to reemphasize what Rara said, and I agree with you. I actually was like, a bunch of nerds dressing up like weirdos and running around and going, it's a Muppet show.
say that.
Right? No, I totally said that. Well, I'm a big. I mean, come on, I have a nerd show. How much nerdier can I get? I'm part of Icon. I'm like uber nerd. I'm an ultimate technocrat here. So yeah, I mean, I was just like, because I did the same thing with Bitcoin too. I'm like, it's nerd money. I don't care, And yeah, when I actually started coming, I wrote a sci-fi book, and I went and I did a couple of writers' tracks, and I went in some science tracks to talk about nanotech and computers. And man, I was just like, what a phenomenal group of people! I am super lucky to be part of this. So yeah, you're dead bang on.
I've been working with Icon for almost 20 years, and to me, it's the science, the technology, the fantasy, the science fiction. It's all very inspirational to see what people come up with and where they take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The costumes are phenomenal, and also I missed the dealer's floor too. I bought quite a few good T-shirts there, like yours. Geeks rule.
It's actually a Microsoft cert, but yeah.
All right, that's fine. So you're not going to stand up and start yelling developers,
You
are
couldn't
you?
just plug Icon, could you? You had to plug Microsoft.
He's the one who commented on the shirt.
It's a great shirt.
Microsoft sucks.
Still good. No, Microsoft's the good guy these days.
Yeah,
Yeah, they really are. Some of the other companies have been behaving so badly.
like Google.
Thank you. Thank
Google
you.
sucks.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, thanks.
That's why I'm with him.
They just were so pure and good. The white screen, the letters.
You know what I love about you guys? Your industry is just so pure. Because if I was able to speak about my industry the way you guys speak, I would be jobless tomorrow. So I gotta temper myself a lot.
Yeah, the truth is, a lot of people, and this is an important point. This is an important point for the show. A lot of people in our industry will not speak about how our industry is.
Really?
You guys are being very brave, being out here, and I'm taking a huge risk by having the show, because every show there's a chance I could say something that could damn my career.
So not going to name names, in part because I don't remember names very well. Anyway, but the number of people I've talked to at conferences and meetings who relay stories about how horribly insecure their networks are in places like healthcare, finance. You realize that Citibank, if you have a Citibank account and you use online banking, their password is not case sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
The password isn't case
The
sensitive.
password is not case sensitive.
Because I always like cutting my possible choices in half.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to set up cryptographic hardness.
It's
Man,
like
it's
my
weird to
Burger
think
King account
Citibank
is case
sucks.
sensitive.
It's weird to think that we're in an era where our Facebook account is more secure than our bank account.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Citibank sucks all around.
Thought you weren't
Yeah.
naming names.
I'll name them.
Nice.
Hey,
yeah,
you
but
know,
there's a
I'm a big fan of
They haven't even
calling
drank
out
yet,
bad
people. Wait till I get them
customer
drinking.
service and bad
Everybody have a drink.
policies.
I want to keep this going.
I got
tweet
coffee.
regularly when people just do stupid stuff.
So, I mean, to be truthful, I'm hoping to walk the line on this show between people ruining themselves and getting the truth out there, and everybody really, But yeah, I mean, our industry can be very.
And I'm just hitting both sides of the wall back and forth just frequently.
I have no doubt that
it
Citibank
would
will
be
never
great to
call
knock
me
the
for
wall
a
down,
job.
right?
So
Then we wouldn't need this. oh, okay. Thank you.
Steve's just a racquetball.
Not for you.
ball.
Oh, you got your.
Exactly.
Okay, so he wants to see.
I really
Raris
want-
is trying to see if he can get me totally.
I don't want to
trashed.
be a princess, but next time I want a biohazard mug. I think it's.
I'll work on it. All right. So, actually, this is perfect. So I don't know if you guys segued on purpose. Oh, there it is again.
Segway!
Isaac, wood wood. Oh, by the way, I got to give credit to Isaac for that unconventional show name. That was really
Yes.
brilliant.
So we had a good runner-up, but that was the best one. So what is the worst office prank that you guys will admit to?
I can't think of an office prank that I even did.
Yeah, I'm really actually a pretty.
I can
lame
think of
man.
several that we wanted to do. I'm trying to think of what.
I mean, I've known like
pulled
for
off.
Take it.
like for
I mean,
example, there's
if you wanted like the worst, you could make it the worst office prank you didn't do.
well, we're in like an office. Like I guess the worst thing I've ever done is like I went into someone's office and they had like pictures of like penises like that they hid for their coworkers, and I kind
Right.
of just like and I just added more. I guess it's like the worst I could ever say I did. It's not even a prank. I don't know
Wow.
because I just
Yeah,
come.
no,
You
that
hit
doesn't even.
penises?
I think,
I go to my
I think
office
you're
and I
helping,
just
but
work.
I'm not sure with what.
Like dildos?
You know, they draw pictures of it, and then they on like post-its, and then they hide it like around like for the other people to
Basically
find.
Went around and did like kind of one.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a really
I just imagine someone open the door like a dildo on a string,
There we
like
go.
There,
smack
it
someone.
looks like
All
a
right.
car.
So the answer for TTP for the Technocrat Live, that's time to penis, is episode 16. We now have a penis drawn on the show.
It's not a racing.
No, no, you can have.
History has been made. The first.
Hi, my name is Steve, and you're watching the Technocrat.
All right, you can start on the vagina now.
He's already erased it. Oh, I love this.
We reshot M rating on
Right,
YouTube.
draw the vagina.
All right, so we've got extra fine Waldo penis drawing. What else have we got? Any other office pranks? I know you got something good, man. You can see his eyes. I know. Don't ruin your life, but you know if you can think of something that won't.
I remember what I did to a student, to an assistant, a
Okay.
medical assistant, a student I let do something. You know, when you give vaccines, you have to ask any allergies, and egg allergies are a big no-no for some vaccines.
Mhm.
And the person had an egg allergy, and they came in for a PPD reading. You know, they put a little bubble into the arm to look for tuberculosis.
Okay.
Nothing to do with allergies. But the patient left, and I went and I screamed at her. I'm like, you gave someone a PPD without telling them, without asking about their egg allergy? And it was more like a test of their knowledge.
Right.
So she had this look of horror. She went very pale. And then color came back to her face and she said, "You're an asshole." But I don't know if that's
Nice.
a prank, but.
Competence and professionalism.
Yes.
I think the worst thing I did, because I'm just sitting there thinking about it. I used to work at a Halloween store, and when at the Halloween store we had we worked at one that was like a high theft
That's your
one,
office. That counts.
Hi, what?
a high theft store.
High
like
theft store?
theft, yeah. Like people would come in, they would take costumes, stick it in their baby carriage with no baby in it, and then walk out with it.
Did you guys frisk people with?
Did
The Halloween.
The baby hung where the costume?
Did you guys frisk all the sexy nurses leaving? Like, hey, I think you're stealing a costume.
No, like what I me and my friend used to do is we got really bored one day when we were doing inventory. So it was like one of those pop-up kind of stores. So we hid behind like the walls there where they put the hooks in, so they had the holes in. And I remember we used to just like freak out everyone who we saw trying to steal or something like that, and just like pop out at them out of nowhere. But that's like
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Great.
awesome.
That's great. That's,
That-
Like, I think that I've been at a store like that, and that happened to my kids, and they loved it. They thought it was the most awesome thing ever.
Well, also my friend was like the full out like goth attire, like the tattoos and the makeup and the long hair and everything.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
So he didn't have to put a costume on.
No, he
looked
didn't.
the part right away.
But no, I just
Office.
what? Go ahead, say it.
Just throw it out there, man.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
Oh, these guys with
Just
their
don't
inside
name
jokes.
names. Just don't name names. Just
too
go ahead
late.
and say it. Oh no!
Yeah, well, hey, look, if it's gonna get someone in trouble,
So
I don't know.
I'll well,
Holy! I wish
So-
I was actually part of this. I wasn't there. Go ahead. You got to
Go ahead. Shoot.
I was really more of a
No, this was elaborate. This was elaborate.
ancillary character in it. I wasn't the primary instigator,
Just say, Lee.
but
There are no human rights. Remember.
Nice.
Do it.
when we were younger, one of our mutual friends was duped into believing in time travel for several
No,
months.
no. Just tell the story, man. Just tell what happened.
Okay.
Just tell it as it happened.
I feel like I've just heard 3 beginnings to a story, and
Come on, guys,
So
spit it out.
Justin was sitting at home one day.
Clock's ticking. We've only got.
Justin was sitting at home one
Seriously,
day.
we have messed around for an hour and 20 minutes. Get it out! Come on, let's go, 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 go,
Hour
go.
10.
Exactly.
Unless
Justin
there's
was sitting at
actual
home
time
one
travel
day.
in the story.
And our friend Dave runs up to his place and starts spouting things like, this happened 25, 30 years ago. I'm trying to remember what he said, but it was something like,
He was wearing some sort of fancy Adidas
He-
outfit.
Justin had never seen him in before. And he starts saying things like, if somebody comes asking for me, don't do something, don't tell them I was here, or something like that. Just give him some reason to wonder what the hell's going on.
Okay.
Then Dave leaves. This is a weekend where Dave was supposed to be away with his parents
Okay.
on a trip. The last minute, it was canceled. Well, I shouldn't say that. His parents went away. Dave stayed behind.
Okay. So nobody knows this.
Nobody knows this but me
Okay.
and Dave's girlfriend. So, Justin,
Maybe.
Dave then calls Justin a few hours later asking him to tape a Star Trek show for him
Right.
because Dave forgot to set the VCR.
Okay.
And Justin's like, "What? But you're home." Like, "No, I'm upstate." Okay. So now Justin's wondering what the hell's going on. He goes down to Dave's house. He keeps looking for Dave. Dave's got this 3-story house on a hillside.
Right.
And
Perfect place to get murdered, I guess.
yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Ideal
But-
location.
Justin's hunting around the house looking for any sign of Dave. Dave and I are holed up in his room, which is on the second floor where you can't see in. And at one point, I'm running between the two, between Justin's house and Dave, and Justin telling me, "Where's Dave? I know he's around." No, he went upstate. To make a long story short, yeah, right? Believe me, not for me. This is short. When Dave's parents get back, he talks to his parents and gets them to agree, yes, he was with them.
Right.
So then Justin comes down, Justin asks his parents say, "Yep, he was with us." Now Justin doesn't know what to think.
Right.
And for 9 months, they kept up the act until another Dave and Justin,
A different
a
person named
different
Dave?
person
Okay,
named Dave,
cool.
and Justin.
Dave number 2, yeah.
We're having this little contest who could make the other believe something more ridiculous. I learned of this and I was like, "Ooh, I know one." And we went back over to the first Dave's house, the instigator, told him what was going on. "I'll be right back." Runs up to his room, changes into the outfit. Justin is cowering in the corner. No.
So you made him believe that time travel was real?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Did you ever tell him, or is he going to find
Oh,
out
it was
when he
he
watches
found
the
out, he
show?
found
that
out.
9 months.
He found
Yeah.
out when David came back down.
Oh
in
my
his
God.
Adidas outfit. In his like futuristic Back to the Future, Doc
Yeah.
comes back with the sunglasses kind
That's
of outfit.
amazing.
That beats the hell out of scaring people in a Halloween store.
That was
I know I'm not doing it justice, but it was epic.
it was so epic.
Really?
And I wasn't there, and it was epic.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then there was the one that we almost did with you the other day, but
What did you do?
Go on.
we were having a nice little parking lot track after Lilog,
Yeah.
and we got on the topic of microphones.
By the way, it's the inspiration for the show. Keep going.
And so we were talking about how Isaac would be able to listen in to anything in your house.
All right. Yes. Yeah, and
Unfortunately, Isaac was asleep, but I did text him asking
so
him
they
to.
texted Isaac to try to call in the show while we were doing the show because I made a joke about how Isaac could hear anything because he's this hacker guy and he's got all these sniffers set up and all this pattern recognition set up, and then he was going to call us on the show and say, "I heard that."
Yeah.
He was going to text us on the show and say, "I heard that."
Unfortunately, Isaac didn't get the message in time.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You don't have to actually trick us like that. You can just be on there. In fact, if you want, leave a message in the comments. If you donate $1 to Area 22 Productions, what is it, Patreon?
Patreon.com/area22.
Yeah, Patreon.com Area 22, and you give us $1. I'll be more than happy to mispronounce your last name as a service for that. So
And if you give a Bitcoin, he'll actually pronounce it right.
It has to be a whole Bitcoin though. At the $18,000 spike.
I'll pronounce it wrong and right, but I'm not promising how many attempts.
So you better save yourself for like 3,000, 4,000 around there. Get a second Bitcoin backed up just in
No,
case.
it's not, for a Bitcoin, I'll give it as many times as I'll take up the rest of the show for that.
An
We'll Technocrat live for Bitcoin.
$11,000 profit for saying someone's name wrong. I mean, sounds like a good deal.
How do you get the model? So,
If any company other than Bitcoin wants to sponsor this show, we will use their name instead of Bitcoin.
yeah.
I don't own the
All
show.
right.
I can't make that promise.
So all right. So I got another topic for you guys. So
But give us your money.
How do you fake intelligence? In other words, what is a technique that you would use to pretend that you were smarter than you are?
Confidence.
Yep. I do
Confidence. Okay.
that. That's a consulting answer.
And
Yes.
laughing.
Don't you worry, we've got you. Wait a minute.
No, that's Eric.
You just did that. You
I
just
know.
laughed.
I know.
You just
It's
laughed.
true.
Laughing.
I know. It's part of my shtick, though. I guess I'm stuck with it. Well, anyway, and asking people to describe the thing that you didn't understand, and then repeating what they said like you knew it all along, like when you said
Yeah.
that word before,
Well,
right? And then well,
Troglodyte.
exactly.
Troglodyte.
Yeah, that was
Troglodyte.
Trilodactyl. It's like a pterodactyl with 3 wings.
Inventing new words. Okay, so how does fake smart get caught? Right. So confidence is how fake smart is you show someone that you're smarter than you actually are. How do you catch someone being fake smart?
By bringing me on this show.
Nice.
Can't argue with that.
Well, you can catch them, but whether they admit it or not's another story.
Well, I'm just curious about catching them. So,
But is fake smart bad? In other words, are you because there's a line between confidence and arrogance.
well, right,
So,
Touche
so-
on that one.
That's fair, yeah.
right.
And I think they get caught when they become arrogant.
Right.
Not. I mean, if they're just confident,
Interesting.
you're
So
being-
you may not have control over the situation; they may have control over it.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
I mean, as a consultant, you go into places. We joke about it, but we literally will go in, talk to some people. What is it you've been telling your boss for the past 6 months? Oh, that sounds like a good idea. You go in, you'll tell the boss the same damn thing that his employee's been telling him for 6 months, and because it came from you, who he's paying.
I've been
for
that
it,
employee. I know exactly what
Right,
you're talking
yeah.
about.
But it's like, is that fake smart? I mean, you're faking it. It's you didn't know how to solve the problem. The damn employee that was sitting there knew how to solve the problem.
Right.
But if you do it in a way that's arrogant, then you kind of get called out on it. And if you do it in a way
Interesting.
that's fake smart, you just get.
I don't know
paid
if
a
you
lot
guys are
of
superstitious, but my left ear is ringing like crazy. Someone does not like this conversation. Continue.
Gee willikers, Batman.
Did you forget to take your earpiece out?
Oh, right.
Most
Sorry.
of the planet who pretends to
Hold
be
on,
smart.
Isaac's contacting me. Okay, so when you, how about when you're creating something unattended? You know, and it doesn't matter whether it's a script or you're building a bridge or
What
you
do you
know,
mean you're creating it unattended?
you're creating something unattended. In other words, you're creating, you know, you're setting a server up, you're fixing a car, you're designing an airplane, whatever it is. If you're pretending to be smart, you're coming through with confidence, but maybe you're not as smart as your confidence actually reflects, and you've built something permanent that you're not going to have access to anymore. The most extreme example would be sending a satellite up into space, right? Once that thing's in space, you can't fix it anymore, right? It's either orbiting or flying away from the planet. It better be right. So,
1 second.
No,
you know,
or
so-
fixed. Check the Hubble.
or fix the
telescope.
bowl at least, right? I mean, you know, I'm not talking about a good effort and an error. I'm talking about just totally.
You're talking about a Martian lander half done in metric, half done in imperial.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of that. Yes, that actually
If the
happened.
damn
people.
metric people had done their job and did it in imperial, it would have been a fine.
Yeah. I like how you take the imperial people's side. Damn those metric people in their basement.
Have a better measuring system.
If we just converted to metric 30, 40 years ago when it was planned,
The really sad thing is we did.
well,
The NIST standards are based on metric.
There-
The definition of a pound is based on.
do you know the road sign? There's at least one road sign I know of on
Right.
Long Island that points to a direction in kilometers.
Okay.
didn't know
Isn't it on the
directions
Southern
came in
State
kilometers.
Parkway, or am I imagining that?
Northern State.
Northern State. Okay.
The direction is 1.6 kilometers for was it Garden City.
That is weird Long Island
Give
trivia.
or take.
And by the way, just don't drive your truck here and think you can go check it out, because those roads have really low clearances.
It's
Unlike the
it's-
rest of the country.
I think it's Glen Cove Road, and I don't remember the name of the road, but it's like just north of 25B, I think.
Really?
Yeah,
That's so weird.
it's on Glen
So,
Cove Road.
in
the
case you
sign is.
didn't know, there was this whole move to, I don't know if we covered this on the show or not, but there was this whole move to move the whole country to a metric system at one point, and it was prevalent in the 70s. Everything had metric and imperial on it for a while, and then we just gave up, I guess. I'm not sure what happened, but so at one point everything had metric and imperial, and now it's just imperial again with occasional leftovers like that.
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, I think that was the problem. The problem was that they was trying to switch over
Right.
rather than transition.
Okay.
I
you think it was
think-
too harsh?
I think it was too harsh. I think it was
Yeah.
like, oh, we have to. Who was it? Was it Roosevelt or who was it who started the whole initiative?
Well, I know
was
there
the
was a big
president.
push in the 70s, so I
Yeah.
don't know if it was Nixon or it was Johnson or
Around that time, they were like, we're going to change all the textbooks and make it into metric. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a bad idea. I think you just have to just sort of transition.
It worked for
1
Microsoft.
mile / 1.6
Well,
kilometers.
that's what's happening in cars. So cars were both for 3 decades, but now they're just metric. You know, there's a couple of exceptions on them for maybe like the lug nuts or something like that, but everything else in the car is metric.
Oh,
So-
No, I meant for general people, not for.
Oh yeah, I don't know, but I'm
engineers.
saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
What you're saying actually did work with engineers, so I suspect it would work with people. You just need to make a longer timeline.
Yeah, engineers, but what about like the kids growing up? You know.
Right. Well, I mean, I think kids can learn it. We're going to get back into kids learning and how that works in,
All right.
in
Topic
a little
number
while.
18
Topic.
coming up in like 3 years.
It's coming up.
Somewhere around
hold on,
4 o'clock this morning,
You
we
do,
should be.
realize, you do realize the office prank thing was supposed to be the icebreaker for the beginning of the show, right?
Oh,
We're
no.
halfway into the show.
Have we hit the halfway mark? Really?
That was the halfway mark.
I mean, you
think
wanted the
it's got
conversation
one,
format, right?
stretch a little bit.
yeah, I love it. Actually, I don't even care. We'll just do this again. You know, we can only revisit the panelists. I mean, I can trick you guys into coming back here with my overconfident laugh. Oh, by the way, there's another thing too, that being happy and confident and laughing a lot and can imply, which is that you just don't give a damn. So there's that too,
Well, that's
right?
generally true.
Yeah. So you can either be extremely confident and feel like you're in your space, or you just don't care and you think it's all funny. So
I'm not sure those are different. I think the more confident you are, the more you don't give a damn.
interesting. I'm glad I brought that up. Yeah, they might be.
Because you need that freedom to make a mistake. You need that freedom to. It's not that you don't care if you do a good job, but there is a freedom that not giving a damn.
I think the medical term they use for psychopaths with this is aloof, right? That you're like when you go from confidence and you start creeping over into don't give a damn, right? So unfortunately, it's very difficult to tell at a glance the difference between someone who's confident and someone who's aloof. That's I think the risk.
You still have to be flexible, though, to be willing to learn when you're wrong.
Right.
right.
No,
Yeah.
wrong.
Wrong. Right.
Or if you
Holy,
completely
you're so
lost your
dry.
bearings, you're a loofah sponge.
Aloof. How about when you're creating something that's unattended and that's highly leveraged? So in other words, something like, again, now it's more specific, the bridge, an airport runway management system, something where there's a lot of destruction if you get it wrong,
737 flight control.
So I'm just trying to figure out this.
What's wrong with
basically
that?
what I'm asking here, and maybe the wording isn't the best, but what I'm trying to figure out is here, when someone is fake smart, at what point does their destruction become so devastating that everyone's got to say the emperor has no clothes?
When Fire Festival happens.
Ah, yes, I like that. Thanks for bringing that up. Fire Festival. You guys know about Fire Festival?
No.
Fire
So
Festival. Oh, do you want to do
Yeah,
it?
you go for it.
Is it
See?
like Burning Man?
No, it's not at all.
It was supposed
so
to be.
Fire Festival. So think about it like this, right? There's a festival on this beautiful island off the ocean.
Okay.
You get all your food catered to you. You get a villa. You get to see some of your favorite bands perform in a Coachella-like fashion, and you get it all for a weekend for a few $1,000s, right? What actually happened is
This does ring a bell.
at the there was a few documentaries on it. What actually happened is everyone went out to this really crappy parking lot on an island because it was the same
They
day
changed
as,
islands, first of all.
they changed islands, and it was the same day as this other big event. So the other big event took priority. So they were in the parking lot section of the island, Everyone was staying in basically like military huts, like little tents instead of villas. The food that they were given were like little bologna sandwiches,
Sounds
And-
like a fish concert I was once at.
and like.
Yeah,
and-
but the problem is that this was
Oh, no,
supposed
the
to be
band's bailed out.
Ultimate creme de la creme of luxury.
Right.
You know, these are
Yeah.
penthouse apartment type people that were going to this thing, and they showed up and they paid penthouse apartment prices, and they got
bologna sandwiches
and a plastic tent with crappy doors, half built campsite.
And on top of that, they weren't even given what they were promised. Like they were promised they'd have their own area. When they got there, everyone just grabbed a mattress and ran for it because they couldn't even finish in time.
Yeah, and everything was soaked because it had just rained the day before, and it was a nightmare.
So,
The guy's-
Sounds like you're camping.
but anyway,
There's a Netflix special on this.
and a Hulu one.
Go-
But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the guy who did that, his name's Billy McFarland. He had this other project that he did beforehand where I forgot the name. It was like this black card, right?
Oh right, yeah.
And it was this
supposed
and it
to
was
be
this
like a
credit card
club.
type deal. And what it would do is it would be like a club. It would be like a club where you would be able to go to exclusive events in New York City and like mingle with exclusive people until people realize that hey, you're just stealing our money, kind of thing. So then this guy went again for Fire Festival with this rapper. I think his name is J. Rule, and he went about it like with all this hype and everything. And then it was just kind of kept building up and building up and building up hype, hiring like the biggest marketing teams and everything on the promise of something that wouldn't happen. And he would,
and they were burning through the money so fast that by the time they actually got to the festival, they didn't have anywhere near
Because
the
he
money needed
didn't even
for the
use-
time because of poor planning.
he used the money more to fund his vacation while building the festival than actually building the festival.
Yeah, it doesn't help that when they got kicked off. Having watched it, I mean, who knows what their financials were, but they definitely should have canceled the thing when they got kicked off the first time. But of course, he couldn't because he'd already spent some of the money. That's the problem with that kind of poor planning. So yeah, okay, that's a good answer. I like that. When Fire Festival happens, that's when you know that someone's fake smart. Any other examples like that people can think of?
Madoff?
Madoff. Perfect. Yes. Right.
Perfect name for a guy that made off
The
with
Yeah.
money.
So this is amazing that people don't talk about this more. To me, this is one of the signs that people are really that our society is something's broken. Something's really broken. I mean, this is a guy who was the founder of NASDAQ. All right, one of the three big stock exchanges, and he was running a Ponzi scheme. Once he left NASDAQ and went to a private company, he was running a Ponzi scheme from the start for decades. And nobody caught him until there was a major downturn and he was forced to cover. It's crazy. I mean, I don't even get it. So, Madoff, perfect example. Any other examples? Anyway, I just thought
Watson and Crick.
Watson.
Ooh.
Fighting words. Go ahead. No, I mean, as far as
They're
I knew,
not the
Watson
one-
and Crick were.
I'll try to talk
legitimate
into the
villains.
microphone.
I knew that they were.
for you.
I knew that they were. There was a huge battle going on. That there was a bunch of people. The DNA has kind of already been gelled in a bunch of different scientists' mind, but nobody was able to get the smoking gun kind of proof of it. And that I know that they also had high-end microscopes that nobody else had at the time, and that was one of the ways they were able to do it. That's all I know about the science of it. Where did I go wrong
There,
in thinking they actually discovered it?
There was, I'm sorry, they used, I don't recall her name, but someone else did the research. They published it. There was a lady scientist before.
They
Yes.
stole it from a lady scientist?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. Actually, my uncle who died had his research stolen, and the person who stole his research actually won the Nobel Prize.
Oh, that's
So it's really fucked up. He died. The person in his next office got it. The research he did.
that's how Iron Man 2 starts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The person who, it's funny because the Nobel Commission, it's like the person who won the Nobel Prize for his work.
Right.
The Nobel Commission never said, "Hey, where did you get an electron microscope?"
Yeah.
You know, like he had no access to electron microscope back then. This was like 1970s.
Right.
You know, and my uncle died, and this person just took the stuff from his office and.
I mean, electron microscopes are still hard to get to. I mean, they're still.
Not really.
Yeah, they're
You can
pretty.
buy them off of eBay if you want.
Because they still need an isolated room. There still needs to be a building that doesn't have any sway, because otherwise they don't work. You know, I mean, they have like a Heisenberg compensator kind of box that they use on them right now. Yes, actually the best description they could come up with for us. And we're sitting in an IT meeting
Yeah.
trying to figure out what was next with this thing. But yeah, I mean, they do need an isolated environment, even if the microscopes themselves are cheap.
Yeah.
So the whole service fee, is not cheap. So, but that's interesting. I didn't. Do you don't recall the woman's name, do you?
I do.
She didn't win the prize. Why would you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay.
That's just a sad.
You get the alternative history here on the Technocrat Live. That's good. So, anyway, anybody else? Okay, so I'll cut it off there, and we'll go to the.
I
next
guess the
one.
actual content of the show.
Yeah. No. This is the
Oh, we're on
content.
the questions?
Yeah.
You know what?
Oh, I thought we were.
Yeah, we're in the questions now. So, I mean,
Okay.
you know, your brains are the content of the show, right? I mean, I can come up here.
Or lack
and
thereof.
what I
It's a
want.
frightening thought.
I
Yeah.
told you I had a brain.
I mean, I remind guests when it's one-on-one, but it's also true for the pals. You guys see me every week. Who cares what I think? It's about what you guys think. So, all right. So, what is the strangest, unexpected, unpredicted technocracy that you've ever run into? Now, you may, in case you don't know what you mean, I have an example. I realize this is kind of a tough one. What's the weirdest technocracy? Like, why are you a technocrat? I don't get it. Like, why? So technocracies can look a bit like bureaucracies, but they don't necessarily have to have any kind of formal structure. They can also be completely. So I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I heard so much information, and I brought this up on one of my previous shows, and I'm not going to get into the details of how it works, but I actually saw a 15-minute video on YouTube the other day that explained how the Slant Section 6 engine from Chrysler works and why it's different than other engines, like how it's fundamentally different. And this guy basically just sat there and figured it out. Yeah, this does sound like a stoner parking lot conversation. But actually, it turns out there is a legitimate mechanical reason why it is different than all the other engines. Nobody knew that. But everyone was like, oh, it's different, it's so much better. And no one would tell me why for 30-something years until I just came across it on YouTube. There's other mechanical tricks like this, by the way.
Got to build bypasses.
So, to me, that is the weirdest technocracy I've ever seen in my life, where the cult of the Slant 6 engine wouldn't share why the Slant 6 engine was special, even though they knew it was, and maybe they didn't even know why it was, but they were right, it was special, and there was a reason why, and it had to do with the stroke to bore ratio was backwards from all the other engines. That's the big secret. So, and that made it super durable because there wasn't as much stress on the internal components, and everything was over-engineered in it too. So a combination of two things. I just gave the whole technocracy away. That was the weirdest technocracy I ever ran into. So what is the weirdest technocracy you guys have ever run into? Something where there's this bizarre secret being kept.
Audiophiles.
Okay,
All right.
that's right.
For audiophiles, I mean, you have, because what the nickname for audiophiles is the hobby of the rich kind of thing, because people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on cables, on a literal power cable that they swear is so shielded where they can hear a hypothetical 0.002% increase in audio fidelity. There's this one guy in Japan who got a transformer outside of his house moved. He paid to get it moved because he claims that the electrical interference of that was making his listening experience on the speakers impure.
Wow.
There are people.
Yeah, I agree with you.
There are people who literally they have audio receivers that they use for their like $100,000 speakers, and they put it on an IKEA cutting board for insulation, where they claim it's like a world of a difference. It's just like very small things where there's companies that make thousands of dollars on profits on something that's kind of objective, like the kind of people who believe that one HDMI cable is better than the other if they're the same standard. Then one could be gold plated, one could be just one you get from Walmart. They do the same thing equally well.
Right.
You know?
Right. You can always add up more shielding onto a cable. You can always make it thicker and heavier. You can always use better materials. You can always make sure the copper's more pure, the ends have better plating.
But at the end of the day,
You
a
just
USB
keep
cable is a
going.
USB cable, still a digital 0 and 1 signal. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's particularly that is very true. It's almost like an emperor has no clothes kind of situation. I'm talking about the last question. See, this question do have kind of a thread in my crazy brain. Where digital cables, the signal's coming through or it's not.
Yeah.
Sure, you could have a higher level of lossiness for the digital signal where it has to retransmit. But
But as long as it's under the threshold of retransmission, so that you don't drop any frames, what the hell difference does it make?
Yeah, but like
You know?
the
As long
audio
as it's
file.
within spec, it's working. It's either on or it's off, right?
Yeah, but like the audiophile industry is built on the law of diminishing returns, because like you can hear an obvious difference
do
between.
you think the digital world is screwing the audiophile industry?
No,
Not the audiophiles, but the audiophile industry.
No, I think the audiophiles, because they're allowing it to happen. Like,
Okay.
so you can hear an audible difference between like $15 to $30 headphones. You can hear it if you're jumping from 30 to 70, 70 to 100, up until after 300 it starts getting like noticeably smaller, right? But what these people do is they will spend thousands and thousands of dollars on something that their friend claims they hear a difference, where if they do blind tests, they really can't tell, you know? Like most people can't tell the difference between CD quality audio and what you get from Spotify. But like,
But
I'm thinking about
but that's-
macho
I mean, that's the
names on
problem.
yachts right now.
no, it's not a problem. It's just like it weirded me out because people are spending thousands of dollars when they get to the point of the minimal diminishing returns area
Interesting.
for a maybe 1 to 2% upgrade.
I think really
That-
weird
that-
stuff is
the-
interesting.
The problem there is if they don't have the thousands and thousands. If I'm choosing to have my high-end audio cables so that my kids, and my kids are eating dog food at night, then there's a problem.
No, I'm not saying.
I've seen that.
If
I've
I'm-
actually seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's
only
that-
once.
That's not that's a problem with that person with that environment. That
Mm-hmm.
you can't put that on the audio file or whatever. Otherwise,
I'm not saying
Otherwise, it's no different than saying if I'm going to drive down the Long Island Expressway, a Buick is no worse than a Porsche, is no worse than a Ferrari, is no worse than a Rolls Royce. I'm getting
Right.
to exit 50 about the same time because traffic sucks. But on one I'm paying 14,000, on the other I'm paying 1.4 million. So what?
No,
As
I'm
long
not.
as
I'm
I've
not
got
saying.
the money to do it.
I'm not saying there's an issue. I'm just saying that's like the weirdest technocracy I've
Okay.
experienced, though.
Yeah.
Because
Fair.
yeah, because because I'm 22. I'm an audiophile. I still buy higher end headphones, stuff like that. But when you join a group of people
too,
who
yeah.
who all had that like mindset invested in snake oil, it's just like a weird like world to be thrusted into.
Right. So yeah, for sure, audio can be extremely complicated. But yeah, there's definitely some snake oil out there too. So does anybody else have another technocracy that they want to share?
Just want to say that you had me at stroke.
All right, nice. We like to talk about strokes and Pickle Rick here.
Pickle Rick!
I left my Pickle Rick at home. I'm sorry.
And it's a big pickle, Rick, from over here.
Okay, so you guys are gonna pass on. That's fine. I get it. It's okay. My feelings aren't hurt. All right. So here's gonna be a controversial one, like those other ones weren't controversial. So you arrive at a new doctor. They hand you a mountain of paperwork. They refer you to another doctor. They hand you a similar mountain, but of paperwork. Whose fault is it? You have to fill out that paperwork twice.
The politicians.
The person for not taking care of themselves.
And I use
Damn, you're narcissistic. I love it, dude. Never stop. Never stop.
And I use politician as a slang for lawyer.
Okay. How about you? Whose fault do you think it is?
I can't even think about that because are you saying that? So are you
Walk
saying
to a new doctor.
I get it.
You got a mountain of paperwork.
I see
you
it.
Fill it all out. He refers you to another doctor. You now have to fill out a very similar mountain of paperwork again.
I'll give you a variation on it. You go
I'm
back
just-
to the same doctor a year later, and he asks you to fill out the same damn mountain of paperwork.
Well,
Interesting.
that's his problem.
Right.
That's just OCD.
Is the only thing we can do is revolution? Should we start here?
Start with the lawyers.
Yeah, lawyers.
I
Next
just,
flammable stuff in your
Malpractice
car. We
lawyers.
can make torches.
is it they fill it out because they don't have the records and you got to
Well, that's there's lots of answers. I've got
Like,
lots.
for example, if I start
Between the doctors, it's so damn hard to move the records
Mm-hmm.
because the HIPAA compliance issues are interpreted by so many people in so many different ways that completely conflict with it. I'll give you a wonderful example from my own world.
I remember Raris gave a good one on his show too.
I've got my daughter's been to doctors for years and years and years, but presently she's going, well, as is everybody, but beyond the normal. And she was at Northwell, and we're trying to have a conversation, ask some questions of her neurologist, and the answers were, well, the answer's in the portal. Okay, but we can't get into the portal. Well, but the answer's in the portal.
That's
Okay.
what the neurologist. I'm sorry. This is what the neurologist said to you.
This is coming back through not that his responses were coming through the portal. Not. He wasn't saying go search for it on the portal or anything.
Who was
There
telling you to go on the portal?
It's coming back through his office and stuff that he responded to our question through the portal. But regardless, what I'm getting at is, so we go, can we have a login to the portal? No, your daughter's over 13. You can't have a login to the portal. Okay. Can our daughter have a login to the portal? No, she's under 18. She's not allowed. Because this law over here says once you're past 13, you can't have it. And this law over here says until you're 18, you can't have
I've
it.
never heard of such a
So
thing.
the fucking 5-year hole that she can't get a
Comedy
login
is
to the portal.
pain.
I've never heard such a thing.
Nigel, you're right.
Yeah,
Comedy is
welcome.
pain.
That is, where do you say, Northwell?
That was Northwell.
That's just a Northwell thing that I've never heard.
No, but all of these are Northwell
Well-
things because it's always about Northwell. They're all institutional things. I'm not trying to pick on Northwell. But
Everybody's
No, no,
covered
no,
in
no,
their
it's-
ass.
the law says whatever the law says, but that's always massively unclear. The question is always how is it interpreted by risk assessment,
Right.
by in-house counsel, and they're all, none of them are trying to do something wrong. Nobody sat around an office and said, let's make this law and screw people, and no one
I
interpreted
disagree
them.
with you.
It's all CYA.
It is CYA.
No, I disagree with you.
Okay, go for it.
You think they sat around and said, let's screw
Absolutely.
people? I don't know.
I need some popcorn for this.
Absolutely. Who wins when people go to court? The lawyers.
Mhm.
I have one buddy who he
Torches.
sued his employer for something they should get, and the money he got back was the money he owed the lawyer. The only people who win are the lawyers in this whole thing. I think it's set up this way. The laws are made by lawyers and judges. They're not made by doctors. They're made by lawyers and judges. And you know what? At the end of the day, they get to charge whatever they want.
Mhm. They also come up with some they come up with some really wacky laws,
On purpose, I think.
like GDPR or other things like that.
On purpose.
Yep.
I'll give you another example. I know
Is somebody
somebody.
paying the politicians to come up with these wacky laws to in turn give them more work? Is that what's really going on here?
No, I think it's just.
Or just-
I think it's
it's
just
just
built.
ingrained.
I think it's built into their
It's
lifestyle.
built into their DNA. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
DNA, lifestyle, whatever.
So like there's literally like a bureaucrat gene and they have it and we're screwed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's somewhere there's a lawyer that this
Well,
made sense to. This was
Of all politicians, what percentage of them are basically lawyers?
All of them. Not all of them.
Not a lot.
Like,
It's
like
their-
98.
They may not,
like
they may
something
not
high.
start out as lawyers, but they end up becoming them.
Well, no, no.
all but a specific bartender from Queens.
If
What do you mean?
you know,
Give her time, she'll come around.
at
He
the
passed the bar as well. Yeah.
at the time they are elected, what percentage have already been admitted to the bar?
Probably very high, 70%.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers,
It's big.
but just from looking at some of the backgrounds from time to time, it just seems like at least 50%.
Right, but
That's. I was saying more like 98%.
I don't know I'd go that high, but at least
I would go that
50.
high.
Maybe 70.
But even,
but
if,
it's
they're
also-
not,
it
even if they're
is-
not lawyers, they have lawyers working for
Right,
them.
but the point is, if they're
they
the
advise them on everything.
if they're the representative,
Yeah.
then they're the ones making these laws that are ultimately going to benefit all the other lawyers.
well, but I don't even
Yeah.
know that they're doing it
So it's a
necessarily
giant lawyer orgy.
intentionally badly. I think it's also just partially the way they think, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading through a GDPR contract today, section 3.1. Controller shall determine the purpose and means of any contracted sub-processor's processing of processor data. I swear to God,
Process
that was a sentence in a legal contract.
I'm gonna pass out.
Contracted sub-processors processing of processor data.
What in the holy fuck? What's is what?
Yeah, there were worse ones, but
Oh my
that
god!
was like, and I don't.
It's like
I don't think
recursion
somebody sat
hell.
around and said, "How can we write this poorly?" I honestly don't think that's what happened. It makes
We have an
sense
Einstein.
in their mindset.
Exactly. This is the whole point of communication. I think they think they're smart.
They've been found out.
See, I had a plan.
Oh,
I knew where you were going.
that is fake smartness. There we go.
fake smart.
That's
Yep.
fake smartness.
Fake smartness.
I don't even know what the hell was said, but I know it's stupid. I don't know what that it meant, but I know whatever was said was fucking
Right.
stupid. Okay.
Well, the sad thing is, if you parsed it long enough, you actually understood what they meant.
No,
You
but
kind
it's
of have to
still
just
stupid.
take parts out and replace parts with letters, and then it begins to make sense. But
All
The
right.
party of the first part to the party of the second part. We'll take the first part and add it to the second part.
exactly, yep. It was that clause, right? It was like,
So if you need top cryptologists to figure out what the fuck you just said, then that's
yeah, I can
something.
make Bitcoin with that clause, man.
It's funny
It could be asymmetric. He might be onto something.
going back to lawyers. When I was in private practice, actually, one of my patients was actually a malpractice lawyer from the dark side.
Technobabble coin.
And she came to me one day and she goes, I was in Connecticut with all my friends and they all got bit by ticks and some of them have Lyme and I think I have Lyme because I think it was ticks and they were like ticks and ticks. And I just listened to her and she looks at me and I look at her, I'm like, I don't think ticks bite malpractice lawyers. I don't-
the classic joke. Why want to snake?
Oh, that's great. So all you have to do is start a malpractice legal institution, and then you don't get bit by ticks anymore. That's great. Or maybe, never mind. No, no more lawyer jokes. Okay.
You know where
No, we just started. No more lawyers.
I'd like to have a lawyer on the show at some.
Yeah.
If you're a lawyer and you want to come on the show and defend yourself.
Oh
or a
my God.
politician.
Yeah.
Can I make a little a segue somewhere?
Yeah, sure. Segue away.
Did you guys ever hear those douchebags, the Press Ganey people?
No.
So the Press Ganey people is an organization. I think some douchebags in college just came up with a way to make money, and they actually do statistics for how good a business works by asking customers their rating. And this has been brought into the medical world.
Right.
So on a scale of 1 to 5, they will ask something like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to refer this provider to your friends?
Mm-hmm.
And based on this scale, companies will go down hard, hospitals go down hard on their employees.
is really that
Oh.
like strongly like perceived and like
Yeah.
that's true.
It is so fucked up. And I know my daughter's going to listen to this broadcast at one point, and I'm using profanity because it's that bad. So,
That's why we have profanity here. Seriously, we're talking about the decisions that are life and death for a lot of people.
yeah.
You
So I actually
Sometimes
had,
it's appropriate.
I was working at this one place, and this guy from the main administration, who walks through the door? He comes in with his little girl, just got out of college, in her nice fancy little suit, introduces her to all the doctors there. This is the representative from Press Ganey. He might as well have brought someone into a pediatrician's office and said, "This is my friend, the pedophile." You know, it was that bad. Oh my God, did I unload on this person? And I told her how messed up these people are. And, you know,
you could go fuck yourself, Press Ganey, okay?
they are so horrible because these scores are
I think we have our
actually-
You have a title for the show.
They are, yes, Press
Gonna
Ganey, go
mix it.
fuck yourself.
Wiki, wiki, wiki.
They are
Go
so
fuck yourself.
horrible.
Wiki, wiki.
They're not, no, I shouldn't say that. They're not horrible people. It's great when they are grading lattes and salads and sandwiches, but when you can't take something as chaotic as the medical field, chaotic in the sense of, you know, we're talking about entropy, we're talking about thousands of little factors, thousands of little cogs, and put one rating on it, and then have the whole system come down on one person. There was actually a resident who the attendings had deemed basically a walking biohazard, and the attendings got together and said, we need to fire this person. This person should not be around.
Yeah, you mentioned this on your show. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. And they would not fire this person because their scores were so high. Yeah.
Right.
And I told her, I'm like, what your company is doing is destroying the fabric of medicine. It is putting people's lives in jeopardy. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm sorry this has affected your career. And I said, this has not affected my career. I have a very good job.
Typical marketing answer.
Yeah, I said, this has affected them. And I-
Marketeers are just like just like any other technocrats, right? They can use it for good and they can use it for evil.
Yeah, and I pointed to all the rooms where the patients were. I said, this has affected them, not me. You have put their lives in danger. on a whole, on a global scale. You are corrupting the fabric of medicine. You are corrupting the way people work. I don't think she got it.
Wow.
I think everything should be graded on the same exact scale with the same criteria, from the quality of this paper to the quality of my healthcare.
So,
Really? Absolutely not.
He was being sarcastic.
Sarcastic.
Oh. I'm gonna wear my dunce cap now. Sorry.
Yikes.
I was on my I was on my soapbox. Sorry
That
about
was
that.
spectacular. Please do that again. I love you, man. You're the best possible. Oh, that's
We're
great.
gonna fist bump. Or you're like,
Yes.
so far, that's the first explosion he gave me.
Ah, man, that's great. I mean, there's the only thing better than making fun of other people is making fun of yourself, man. The self-deprecation is the key to successful faking that you're smarter than you actually are. I mean, that's just for me. That's not you.
I feel like intelligence is a lot like humor in the sense where, like, if someone calls themselves funny, they're probably not funny. you
Yes,
know?
I'm so funny. It
Like,
was very
like-
funny. Well,
Like, there could be a difference. Like, you could say, like, I'm a comedian, and by definition, you could be funny by that result. Just like
Right.
if you're like, if you could be working in an intelligent position, like in a programmatic
Tell me a
field.
joke, funny man.
Yeah, but I feel like someone who calls himself, who says, "I'm intelligent," like, are you though?
Yeah, yeah. Like military intelligence. Yep. Yeah.
So you can usually tell a lot of signs from, like, self-deprecation, sarcasm, things like that.
Right.
People
I
who are
think it was
just
I almost brought it up in one of the shows. I actually had the URL and I never talked about it. But there was actually a study that generally more intelligent people curse like truck drivers, sailors.
I'm pretty sure you mentioned. I do think you
medical.
mentioned that.
I did mention it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, I think it's a lot of and
Because I have the
part of
filthiest
it
mouth
is-
that
What
anyone.
happens when it's selective?
Right.
So there's a consultant that I know, and I do work for him from time to time. And for the most part, when I'm interacting with people, I don't use words that offend people.
Okay.
But for some reason, this guy, who doesn't use them either, whenever I'm around him, I have this tendency to say, well, that got fucked up. That shit, don't use that.
Wow.
It's like I can't stop.
Right. Interesting.
Just around him.
I'll-
And not even as much around him.
Right. I got
And he
it.
taught me half these
Well,
words.
you know me. When I don't have a something holding me down, I curse like a truck driver, right? But I can stop it.
You should see me when I'm
You
mixing.
curse around some people. More
I
than
will say
others.
I've gotten better. I've known this guy for like 9 years now at this point, and I've gotten better
Sorry,
with
truck
him.
drivers.
But for the first 5-6 years I knew this guy, I was a truck driver with him.
Yeah.
And no one else.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. I've
thing with
experienced
patients,
that too, and I don't have an answer for you. Sorry, man.
But
Go fish.
also, a lot of self-deprecating and then the profane humor is really good as an icebreaker, and I think that's why a lot of people use it too.
Right. So I think part of what's just to go back to your earlier point, I think part of what's happening here is I think that there's a marketing rebellion. I think people are very angry with surveys and with the attempts to manipulate people. I think that people are done with it. I see a lot of people lying to polls.
Now, please answer this poll if you think you're done with polls.
Exactly.
It's like
We're gonna have a poll on whether you answer polls or not anymore.
there's only 50 questions.
So
Come on.
originally,
I wanna
people
come
were
up with a
arguing-
poll on
Nice
polls.
thing- that was the nice thing about, I think, is it the net satisfaction score?
Polish
It's
people,
the,
rods
it's
on
a
polls.
single question
dancing.
survey.
Pole dance.
Yeah.
That one I don't have a problem. That one I'll fill out. When people are doing net sat surveys, it's one freaking question. It's like rate it from 1 to 10 kind of thing. and
What
that's
about
it.
you, Raris? Do you think
Done.
net satisfaction surveys are better than the others?
In what sense?
That they're less misleading, less destructive to the
No, it's
fabric
not-
of medical science.
It's not even that. I'm just saying I'm willing to fill them out.
Well,
Okay.
What you do with the result is.
I mean, right? Because I think people are having a normal, healthy, and correct reaction to the overuse of marketing to manipulate people. Like, oh, okay, so we're just going to keep trying things. We have a goal. We're going to keep trying things, and then we're gonna pull the results and see. Okay, they moved in this direction. That's what we want, and without having any understanding of the broader social consequences. There's no discussion with it. It's just we have a narrow target. And we're just throwing it at everything and hoping to get to one
There are
endpoint.
two uses for marketing. One would be to manipulate people, and I think that's negative.
Oh yeah, and I don't
But
hate
the
all
other
marketing.
is to
I don't
simply
hate all marketing.
to sim-
We have marketing people in the room.
The other is to simply sell your wares, right? I mean, and in that regard, to understand what the world wants, what the community wants, and market to it.
Right.
I don't see a problem with
Well,
that.
feedback's
Yeah.
always good, right? It's
No.
a question of what you do with it.
No,
No? Oh, feedback's not even always good.
no,
Interesting.
it's not.
Shoot.
I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
Got a
Thanks.
lot of knobs over there to control the feedback. Feedback's not always good.
Thank you. You know, no, I'll give you a great example as a
That's
physician,
true.
right?
All right, yeah.
I'll tell you
no.
exactly how the things like the Press-Ganey score have affected my behavior as a physician
Okay.
with certain patients. When someone would come in with a flu-like illness,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of when it was, but especially in the summertime, when it wasn't flu season, the standard medical question a physician should ask, have you had any new sexual contacts in the past 2 to 4 weeks?
Excuse me.
Thank you. Look at that. Look, that's exactly the whole reaction.
Yeah.
Okay? Because HIV, hepatitis will have a viral prodrome. People will have a flu-like illness 2 to 4 weeks after being exposed to the virus. So I would ask the
okay.
patients the question. I would even explain why I'm asking the questions.
Cool. I was just
So let's say
ringer,
out
I
of-
didn't even know it.
Let's say, but you see, there was like a little wide-eyed
Yeah, no, I
kind
got
of
it, I got it.
offensive thing. So out of, let's say, 500 patients, 3 patients would go, I had a one-night stand exactly with clockwork 2 weeks ago. You should really be tested for HIV at this point. It was a one-night stand in a bar with a stranger with no condom. You should be tested.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many negative feedbacks on this Press-Ganey.
Well, fuck you for trying to save their life.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That I was put into question for my my directors were like, "Do we hire a sociopath? Are you a competent physician? Why are you asking a patient about their sex life when they're coming in for the flu?" In the comments would say, "I came in for the flu, and I don't understand why the doctor was asking about my sex life."
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped asking.
Right.
I stopped
I
asking
think this
because
is-
it was effective.
I think this is happening in politics too. I think people are lying to polls because they don't like the results when they're honest with them. So
Yeah.
I think that's what's really happening.
But,
a lot
you
of
know-
people are like, no, the polls are not accurate. The polls are not accurate because people have changed.
Yeah.
This current generation of people
Well-
are like, you know, when polls originally became popular in the '70s, people were disgustingly honest with them.
The problem
and eventually it
isn't-
stopped.
The problem isn't only with the poll. The problem is how. I understand what you're saying. If that hadn't been gathered, you wouldn't have been asked.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that what didn't happen was that when you were brought in front of a group of people, that the doctors in the room got up and said, "This is the standard that we use with this question. Why is he asking it? Because that's what we fucking taught him to do
Well-
in med school. This is what we were taught to do in med
Because
school.
that's gonna
This
save
is
lives.
What you do.
That's the right thing
Well,
to do.
there's
We're
also-
sorry the person was uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
2
But
out of 500 are now not spreading AIDS.
The person in question doesn't respect the doctor,
Yes.
Right.
doesn't care why they're
Nobody
being
does
asked this.
We know because people don't respect
But-
authority, which is the same
But
thing I'm saying.
part,
about
well, but this
the
is part of the
polls are fucking
problem.
up.
This, to me at least, from my understanding, it's part of the problem with these urgent care centers in general.
Mm-hmm.
They go to them because they want a quick treatment and then they leave. They don't
Right.
want to get to know a doctor. They don't want a doctor to get to know them.
Well, I'm gonna be on their side here for a second. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons that people want a quick treatment is because it's this thing, same thing as I was saying before. One of the reasons that people appear to be lazy is because they're literally balls of the wall. They just have their head in a vice. They only got 20 minutes of free time a day, and any kind of disruption means that they're dead. They're dead. Most people have $500 worth of slack in their finances.
And because of that, they'll
Any
be dead.
disruption, they're dead. Yeah, and because of that, they're dead. Literally, it's easier for them to die than to fix their life in a mildly disruptive way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Financially, time-wise, because financial and time, you can, if you have money, you can buy more time. So it's not like they're kind of the same thing. This is.
But I think if you
It's the same
stop
problem.
going to your regular doctor and you only go to urgent care centers, then I will give you what you said. On the other hand, if you use an urgent care center it's 8 p.m. on a Friday and I don't feel good, and my doctor I won't talk to till Monday, and I won't get to see him till a week from Thursday, then it serves
that's
a
completely
role,
different.
and that's, I think, is perfectly acceptable.
It's
If you're substituting the primary care with urgent care,
Yeah.
that's a different story.
See, the problem here lies that we at urgent care or primary care, we're held to the same standards of being responsible for the patient for 2.5 years in New York State after they walk out the door.
Yeah.
So someone comes in, they're a brand new stranger. I never saw the person. When I was in private practice, somebody would walk through my door. I'd be like, whoa, Bill, you look like shit, man. What happened to you? Like, I would know my patients off the bat. I know they were sick. I know, like, wow, you look great. What have you been doing? You working out? But urgent care, I don't know. I've seen people, I'm like, ma'am, I'm really concerned that you look very pale, that you might have a severe case of anemia. They're like, nope, I've been this way my whole life. My friends call me Casper. You know, so you don't know the patient. So everyone is a
feel that.
high-risk case because you don't know the patient. So it's like they come in with the flu. It's like, I don't know, it's the flu or it's HIV. I don't know their sexual practices. In my private practice, I knew who was married, who was faithful in the relationship. I knew who was stepping outside of the relationship. I could approach him that way. So if someone comes in who I know is faithful to their partner, and they say, oh, I have the flu, I'm not thinking HIV because I know they're faithful to their partner. But this is a stranger walking through the door with a flu-like illness. I have no idea where you've been. Maybe you just came back from, some country where you just had an orgy with a bunch of prostitutes. I don't know these people. I don't know the person walking through the door. I need more data. I don't have the data. I have to ask the questions.
Right.
But I stopped asking the questions. I stopped asking.
Well, if you weren't held to that, and I'm not a fan of that look back, but if you weren't held to that look back, you would at least have the freedom to say, look, it almost makes sense for me not to ask because I'm gonna treat this as a transactional situation. Now there's a physician's desire to heal problem with that, but at least from a transactional problem, you can treat it as, you look like you got the flu. I'm gonna treat you for the flu because there's no look back.
Yeah.
The idea behind the look back is to force you to try and be a little more holistic, but it's not what happens.
I'm perfectly fine. If someone walks through the door and say, I want to be your client to treat me for my flu-like illness, that's fine. Just don't pretend there's like a doctor-patient relationship.
Right.
Because a lawyer told me, there's a doctor-patient relationship. If I ask you right now if I have a headache and you tell me to take an aspirin, you've established a doctor-patient relationship. And I told that is not in any basis of reality.
The company compiling those statistics has stolen the doctor-patient relationship. They have more information than you do.
No, but I don't care.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I'm
That's
saying,
fine.
but
But
that's,
don't hold me
if we're
accountable to
looking at
those
the whole
standards.
society and we're looking at like what's wrong with the system, that's what's happened. Is literally they've stolen that relationship from you
But
and
it's
given
fine.
it to themselves, and they're abusing it.
That's perfect. You know what? It's the individual.
I don't think it's fine. I think that's the problem.
No, the problem is the individual person, the patients,
Right.
the person, the clients, whatever you want to call them, their individual ability to differentiate between a doctor-patient relationship and a clientele interaction
of course.
at an urgent care. There is no, for someone who walks in and sees a doctor for a cough, was diagnosed with bronchitis, given some wait-and-see antibiotics, it's not fair to hold them for 2.5-year obligation that if 2 years from now you find out you had lung cancer and go back after that doctor, why didn't you do a chest x-ray? Because a cough can come with cancer.
Right.
That's fine. It's the same thing as saying that, oh, I had a one-night stand in college with someone. We have a relationship.
It's almost like
You
they're
know, it's-
that kind of standard is almost like they're not a human being. I mean, how many I must have had 50 coughs in my life. What? Come on, have you guys ever been on Earth?
But that's the problem.
Much less
That's
That's the
the
problem.
standard.
That's the standard, because if someone said
It's like
urgent
they're
care,
aliens.
if they said, oh, look, primary care doctor, you know the patient, you're responsible for 2.5 years, I'm like, oh, that's fine. But one person who comes in with a cough that I saw for 6 minutes, I shouldn't be held accountable for 2.5 years for their health.
So these are great answers, guys. I really appreciate this. So
Topic number 7.
And I helped.
yeah, everybody participated. So I was really nervous because we all come from very different backgrounds. That this was going to be just all over the place, and it was just going to be all Steve or all Lee or all Walden or all Raris or all me. God help us, But and it wasn't. So I'm really happy with the way you guys are playing nice with each other and supporting each other and coming up with new ideas and
I
contributing.
told you I could play nice with people.
Just wait until the parking lot later.
They're gonna tussle. They're gonna meet at the jungle gym.
Wait until the bathroom.
Rumble in the jungle.
Meet me at the flagpole at lunch, nerd.
All right, so
technology is an arms race. You know, and I'm not even going to ask it as a question. It's an arms race. Everybody's got the latest technology. Everybody's got the latest whiz bang stuff, the latest gadgets, and I was kind of making this point before about me suffering because I'm balancing my checkbook by hand and not just doing auto pay on things. I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not participating in the arms race. Eventually, if you never participate in the arms race, it gets to a point where you're just overwhelmed and you're kind of forced into it. So, but you know, what we were talking about before about time constraints and not having enough time and not having enough money to solve problems. So, I'm not even taking questions on this. I think that's just true.
I'd like to make a comment, though.
Sure.
By you balancing your checkbook, I think you are an advantage as a human being.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I've found myself taking out my calculator to do math that I was able to do in high school in my head.
Nice. Yeah, I can actually do better at math because I'm the one who does the finances.
Right, so you
I've
actually-
actually gotten ahead of my wife. She used to be better with math than
Yeah.
I was, and I've gotten ahead of her. Just, you know, the simple stuff, not the difficult. No one's really good at that. But,
I, on the other hand, have found myself bringing up a calculator and doing 3 times 100. And then going,
That doesn't
what
seem
the
right.
fuck did I just do? It's not that I couldn't have figured it out. It just becomes so. If I need to multiply 2 numbers, I'm just gonna bring up a calculator, and then you hit the 2 numbers, and it would be like, well, yeah, I could have done that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's-
No, I have definitely seen a decrease in my math skills, and it's
yeah, you don't-
irritating.
And it'll come back if you use it, so that's good. It's like a bicycle, you know, having been in and out of it. So, you know, my attitude is just embrace the Cthulhu. I think that's most people's attitudes. You have to embrace the Cthulhu, and you know, if you want to not fall behind in the arms race, it's this or that. It's not really a question of. You can argue about where the line is, but so this is actually what I want to talk about. Where is the line? So, my question for the group is: what is a cyborg, and how far is too far?
Are you talking about like an actual cyborg or a metaphor?
Well, so the easiest, I'll give you the easy one because I'm easy and simple, and that way I can look smart, and then I'll give you guys the hard question, and then you guys have to ponder the hard question. So Elon Musk said basically, you're basically a cyborg now with your phone, you know, because you can do anything. It's an enhancement to your brain. It's remembering things for you. It's doing math for you. It's communicating with people. That is the dumbest, simplest possible explanation.
That's a really bad answer.
I agree. But at some point, we are going to start doing, I don't know if any of you guys watch Black Mirror, but yeah, okay. So they explore this as I think is a literary tool, but whatever. They have little dots you can put on your head, boom, you're in VR. And it's immersive, and you think it's reality. It's like a holodeck gumdrop
I've
you
seen
put on your
variations.
forehead.
Okay.
Yeah. So, sorry, I just spoiled a little Black Mirror. Now you don't have to watch it. No, I'm kidding. It's really good. You should watch it. So that's clearly a cyborg, at least while you have that thing on your head. There's an in the middle someplace. You know, is a smartwatch a cyborg, right? This is reading my vitals. You know, is that creepy? You know, how far is too far for each of you guys? And then when do you reach the point where you say, oh my God, I can't be a Borg. I'm out of here, and you go hide out in a farm.
So-
I told you to come back to this.
Smart homes.
So what I would say is, if there's a cure for cancer, there is not too far.
Well, let's say the cure for cancer is before the end, and it keeps going, and you keep enhancing yourself way past the cure for. Let's assume all.
Then I'll keep
diseases-
going.
Let's say all disease is cured in 10 years,
Oh,
right?
boy.
So it's just a matter of.
You're out of business.
We're out of food and air. That's
Yeah,
the
right?
problem.
Yeah.
Well, that's gonna be fucking
Hey,
hell of a party for 30 years.
if you're-
Until then, though.
If you're sufficiently cyborg, you don't need it.
Okay.
Oh, right. So that's a very good point. You know, if you just upload your brain up into a computer and it's a perfect simulation of you, is it you?
Yes.
What if it does all the things and goes back into your brain,
What
and
if
then
you
your
copy
body
it?
dies and it can no longer go back into your brain?
What if you copy it and you
That's a
now have
Black Mirror,
twins?
by the way.
I think that would be the answer to our problems is to exist on a virtual reality plane.
Assuming it's lower energy cost.
Assuming we're not already.
People were already bad at measuring.
I mean, yeah, look at the
energy
Fibonacci
costs,
spiral.
Net energy costs.
So-
So.
Well, I mean, but bring it. So
Well, I'm talking about
I
for you
think
guys
anything-
personally. You
yeah,
can,
so-
you can
so-
try to throw it on society, but I'm
I
really
think
talking about.
anything that is an external tool, even if it's reading your measurements, a watch, my
hat,
phone, whatever,
A pair of underwear, a chastity belt.
That's a tool. It hasn't even breached the surface of cyborg yet.
Right, right.
I mean, something, I think it has
Implanting
to
an
be internal.
RFID into your wrist so that you can walk indoors.
That still, I don't think is a cyborg because
That's a
it's
first
closer.
step. That's
It's
a cyborg.
closer.
That's a
No,
cyborg.
because it hasn't integrated to your systems. It's just you stuck it in your pocket, but your pocket was under your skin.
Yeah, what happens if you swallow it and just rub your ass on it?
So you say we evolved into kangaroos at that point, essentially?
But try it.
Well, but I would say something that go back to ancient tech.
swallow it
Go
right
to a pacemaker.
We've lost these two.
I know.
keep going, keep going. I'm listening.
I think ancient, and I don't mean ancient as in it's not still practical, but it's been around for 1,000 years. Right, not literally, but a pacemaker
Yeah.
is significantly closer to cyborg
Right.
than an RFID chip in my wrist. I mean, that thing is responsible for my heart continuing to beat if it decides to do something stupid.
Right, right.
You know,
And then I've seen
a-
sci-fi where they get hacked. So, you know.
But you can go on to something where it's an artificial limb. If it's
And by sci-fi, I
you know,
mean, what was that?
Captain Hook with a piece
Homeland.
of lumber stuck on his foot is not a cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can attach something where I'm thinking about the fingers moving and suddenly the fingers are moving, you've doesn't make it bad. I mean,
Right.
but I think you're now entering that territory of cyborg. If anything, I think that's wonderful.
So
Right.
you're thinking like the more medical sense.
I
of
think
it.
you have to.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Doesn't
don't
have to be
forget when you get
medically
that
good, maybe you
when you
attach
get
the
that level of
weapon, but
neurological
it's-
integration, you get the Doc Ock problem. Not to make it as dumb as possible, but the comic book. But you know, Spider-Man, everyone knows who Doc Ock is, right? You know, where he puts the arms on and he's controlling the arms.
Yeah, the
and
neurotransplant
once he kills the chip that has the 3 laws in it or whatever it is, the arms are controlling him, right? Because it's it's a two-way street.
And that's
So-
kind of where I sit on the line. If we're talking from like a non-biological perspective of it, like when I stop controlling technology and it starts controlling me, like the first example I can really think of where I kind of felt where I experienced that is actually smartphones. When I remember when I used to buy smart.
To see how soon before you're nervous that it took away your
No,
phone.
but no, I remember back when because
I was nervous for you.
back when I first got my smartphone, you had expandable storage,
Yeah.
you had removable battery,
Yep.
you had an open source user interface that you can use, and just everything about it was customizable. Over time, you get the locked-in glass backs. You get the locked-in storage. You got to pay for upgrades, and you're certainly the phone's no longer at the whim of your needs, but you're at the whim of your phone's needs, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good example of a non-cyborg kind of power erosion happening in a technology that if it was in your body, it would be very disturbing.
Yeah.
Any other limits? How about nanotech?
There was a very
How about a situation where you had to have nanotech because it was the only way to protect yourself against non-biological viruses? You had to have nanotech-based, basically robotic immunizations.
It's just one layer of stupidity over another. This whole thing like humans just doing something stupid on top of stupid on top of stupid. It's just like, why can't people just live their lives? No, seriously, why do we have to have like artificial viruses
And he bought the farm.
farm?
So I think we found your limit.
So
No, I just don't understand like the whole what drives humans to do.
Well, this is a lot of nerds, a lot of technical geeks.
How
a
is
lot of
nanotech different?
obsessed with the latest tech.
I mean, so your example of nanotech for a virus, right?
Yeah.
How is that different than an antiviral drug? What's the difference?
I mean, you're going to have to start running semantic on your nanotech.
That's a certain, you don't have to pay for your immune system. That's the difference, right? Your immune
but-
system theoretically every time you live through something, it gets better.
But once you
semantic may
started,
just get more
taking
expensive.
drugs, you were cyborging your immune system anyway. Because it's a chemical drug, it's okay. But
Oh, yeah, of
because it's a
course.
mechanical
I agree.
drug, it's not.
In a way,
What's the
yes,
difference?
vaccines have made us cyborgs in a small way. Yes, we have artificially trained our white blood cells and our immune system to block diseases that we know about. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. So that's not my limit. Some
Right.
people seem to have that limit, right? Some people are the anti-vaxxers.
Anti-vaxxers.
Yeah. So I'm not on board.
Oh, I just want to make a comment.
I'm like that sympathetic and what the is wrong with you people? I get it, but I don't.
Just don't bring back
I just need to make
smallpox.
a comment just to defend myself from when we were on together.
Right.
When I was on your show.
Sure. This is
one of my
chance to zing me.
one of my colleagues said that it sounded like I was an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
I am more pro-vaccine than the CDC is pro-vaccine.
Right.
I am not an anti-vaxxer just because I said that
wanting something to work and not suck, it doesn't make you anti-vax.
Right, exactly. So I just want to get that clear.
This is something that happens a lot in technology, where you start criticizing a technology, you say, this is a little bit broken, we should fix it, and people go, you hate technology. No, I just don't want it to suck. You know, I want it to be good. This is kind of like, the open source guys got this a lot in the early days of Linux. You hate Microsoft. You hate closed source software. You hate programming. You hate computers. You're Luddites. No, we just did, that particular setup didn't work for us. We wanted to try something new. And, you know, we said, yeah, I'll take my chances. And sometimes it works and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was a smoldering pile of dung. You know, when you put together an open source system. It didn't work. Lots of open source software made promises and didn't even compile or run, or was so buggy it crashed immediately. But sometimes it worked and solved problems. And you're like, this is better. That's a choice that you should be able to make when you have a technology. And so actually, something I meant to mention to you on your show, vaccineingredients.net is actually a listing of all the ingredients in all the vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage people, if you're not sure, start there. You know, it's a listing. It isn't per company; it's per vaccine type. So it may vary for company to company, but at least it's a start, and that way you can go and print it out and bring it to your doctor and say, "I'm worried about this and this," and then that'll save him time, it'll save you time, and maybe you can become
and save a life too.
and save a life too. Save a lot of lives if it becomes a systemic problem for
Yeah.
a city like New York.
I'm just for the record, I'm pro-disease and pro-selection,
Yeah.
pro-natural selection.
You're the hot dog off the floor in Calcutta during a soccer riot camp.
Let's not push it.
That was. Sorry, I'm quoting George Carlin. If you don't
I'll
recognize
wash
it.
out
Wait.
my hot dog. Thank
So
you
wait,
very much.
you're pro-vaccine, but you're also pro-disease to help limit
Absolutely.
population.
Absolutely.
So where's your balance there? Where's your kind of line?
Good.
Because people who are anti-vaxxers are going to inherently die of like these diseases if things go wrong.
That's
But
fine.
if you're pro-vaccine, then like, where's your kind of moral ground there?
I don't have moral grounds on this.
Okay.
There is no moral grounds. It's a matter of education, going to the library, reading, making a decision. I've seen an 8-year-old dying of meningitis.
Mm-hmm.
I know what meningitis does to little kids. So I'm not psychologically prepared to watch my child go through dying of meningitis. I'm prepared for her to go through measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox. Is she vaccinated for these things? Yeah, she is. But I'm also psychologically prepared for her to go through these things. I'm not prepared for her to go through meningitis. I wasn't prepared to see her die of dehydration with rotavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So I do, and my lines actually pass the CDC guidelines.
Damn,
The
that's
CDC
good. Thank you.
So the CDC actually,
That's a good answer.
if you look on vaccine recommendations, they say measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, the chickenpox vaccine, is contraindicated in pregnancy. The word contraindication for
Anybody
me,
out of water?
the word contraindication for me is a very serious word. It means under no circumstance, for whatever reason on this planet, should you give this medication to a human being. There is no benefit from it under certain circumstances, like giving the anti-migraine medication, the sumatriptans, giving it to a pregnant person. There's no reason for it. It's going to cause fetal abortions. It's going to cause fetal malformations. There's just no reason to give it for a migraine headache. You know? Whereas opposed to the measles, mumps, rubella, and the varicella vaccine, which are live attenuated vaccines, the CDC says they're contraindicated. They're not contraindicated. It's a severe, really know what the fuck you're doing, caution warning. And I'll give it to you this way. If there was a wild strain of chickenpox going around, spreading across the country, a doctor would say, I'm not giving the vaccine, the anti-chickenpox vaccine, to a pregnant woman because it's contraindicated. Whereas a physician will actually sit down with the patient and say, this is what's happening. This is an attenuated vaccine. It's alive. It can cause problems, but it's not pathologic like the wild strain vaccine. Do you want this vaccine, or are you going to run your chance being exposed to the live chickenpox virus while you're pregnant?
So if you say to someone, you suggest them a vaccine and they say, no, I don't want it, are you just going to be laissez-faire at that point, or are you going to try and convince them to take it?
I don't convince people. I tell people, these are the risks. This is
So
the
you give them the
benefit.
facts and then you let them
These
do
are
what
the
they
facts.
will.
You ever shame them?
No, absolutely not. It's
I
their
would be very
decision.
tempted to shame them.
I can't shame them because it's,
So-
who am I to shame
What would
someone?
what would you do if they said, well, what would you do? Would you answer them, or would you just
Yes,
say
I
these
would.
are the facts?
No, I do share my personal experience with
Okay.
people. I do share, and I do tell them I'm not prepared. Whatever I said here on the internet, I say to my patients. There's nothing different that happens in the room that happens with me speaking in a public forum.
Well, maybe Pickle Rick.
Pickle Rick, not tell my patients Pickle Rick too. It's a matter.
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken.
You present the facts, and I tell patients go to something that ends in .edu or .gov. Read what the doctors wrote, that other doctors read. Read about the disease, see what happens. If you are psychologically prepared to watch your child go through it, do not give the vaccine to your child if you don't want to give it to them. If you are not prepared, give the vaccine to your child. Make the choice. Man up.
But this goes back to something you said earlier about people being lazy.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to something that ends in .gov or .edu. They want to go to Facebook.com and see what their friend wrote.
WebMD.
Not my problem.
Because there's a print screen that says, from George Washington's blog, we determined that this was the case.
Well, part of the reason for that is a medical one, because it's Facebook and all the other social media sites have become gambling sites, and they give you a dopamine hit every time you look up something or view things on there. So literally their gambling addiction is interfering with their ability to manage their health.
That reminds me.
I don't have.
Look at our phones on the table. Look at us.
I
was different,
have a
though.
live stream on it.
I don't have a Facebook account, so I can't tell my patients what Facebook opinions mean to me. I don't. I have my medical textbooks.
Right.
I have my legitimate sources to read from. I give them the information the best of my knowledge. It's up to them, man. I'm not their daddy.
I've
you
had
know?
people try to argue politics with me based on something they read on Snapchat news sources.
Well, there's nothing
Like-
wrong. So I
like
want to
the-
say something.
like it's- no,
There's
it's not- I'm
nothing
not
wrong with Snapchat news sources.
I'm not saying that,
you
but-
have to verify it. You have to get another
But the
source.
way they
Lazy
present it is
people.
the
People are lazy.
the way they present it is in that way. It's like because they know their audience and they're presenting it in a way to where they can gear it towards their audience to get more clicks on those stories.
Right.
Instead of trying to give you a factual source.
I mean,
but like
I'm
what
all
Walden
for it,
like
too.
what Walden said and on his episode, like you still need to have the knowledge to be able to look it up and judge for yourself from the facts based on that.
I've fallen for it too. I'll see something that I'm certain was true before I even looked at it. It'll confirmation bias me, and I'll be like, ooh, and I'm like, I get that little endorphin hit, and I'm like, yeah, click, and I'm like, oh wait, let me look this up. Nope, unclick. Fortunately, I've never been in a situation where I couldn't retract something, but I have retracted things. I've been part of the problem. So lately, I've been much more cautious about it. But it's crazy.
Well,
You can just have an emotional reaction to something you wanted to hear.
There's a reason I phrased my comment earlier about the IQ test for police officers. Is that real?
Yeah.
Because it's an interesting
go,
thing to me. It's an interesting
can't
thing to
answer
me
you because I-
if it is real, but I don't care enough to go research that.
Right.
So if I tell you about it, I give you that caveat. I don't know, but if it's true,
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Well, you saw my reaction. I couldn't back you up as
Yeah.
much as I wanted to. I was like, oh,
And I
I
didn't
really
need you
do
to.
trust you. But I mean,
I don't need you to back me up.
I know. Well, this is, the thing is, people can trust each other and care about each other and listen to each other and respect each other and still say, I'm going to double check.
Yeah.
You don't have to freak out on people if they get it wrong. And likewise, you just don't repeat it until you check for yourself.
The
That
other
includes your physicians, people. Okay.
the other
We
thing
get things wrong too.
Although maybe you should check your physician with another physician on Facebook.
Yeah.
the other thing is you may be misinterpreting something. I may be misinterpreting something.
Right.
I read something. I missed that word that said not. Oops.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like
There were a lot of words there,
this
people.
is a topic that is actually
There's
in
at
the
least
big
7.
list that we haven't really broached before, but we're actually broaching it now. What is the truth? And I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is diminishing returns as you approach the truth. You never arrive there. It's a journey.
But it goes back to the perception is reality.
Like we said on your show, what was that? The problem with safe rooms is life's a journey, and you're not going anywhere if you're safe. It's a journey.
along there.
You're gonna hear stuff you don't want to hear. And guess what? The good news is sometimes it's not gonna be true. The bad news is sometimes it is. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt to find that out. To go through that journey. That's life, man. Life is pain. So at least laugh. Laugh with me. Oh, that was beautiful. I love you guys. We're having another panel with this group. So the next question is, STEM is rooted in computers. There's a lot of talk about getting everybody on board that we possibly can onto the science bandwagon, you know? Yeah, so don't worry, this isn't that bad. It's something new. So I've read this idea before in science fiction, so I haven't heard anyone articulate this, so I thought I'd throw it for you guys and see what you think. The idea is that if computers are really, everything's computers now, right? Every kind of science involves some kind of computation. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot, but there's always at least a little bit. So if we really want to advance science, computers are an easy target. So if computers are logic and language, why don't we look at advancing language? And what I mean by that is not just advancing computer language, but actually advancing the types of language we're exposed to. So I'm talking about a regimen of alphanumeric, talking left to right, right to left, up and down, at least one of each kind of language. Music, because music actually has a programmatic and a loop kind of structure within it. Hieroglyphs, because hieroglyphs is using a complete substitution kind of language, where you're using one thing to mean something completely different. Overlaying languages, where you have like the Oriental languages typically, where you have strokes and dots and such, and everything's going over each other, very much like a circuit board. Shouldn't we be teaching children one of each kind of language so that they can turn around and connect those things in the technology world?
No.
Until you can teach children communication, it doesn't matter if you teach them languages.
I think expose
I mean,
them.
if we had infinite intelligence, wouldn't this be useful?
No.
But we don't.
Yeah, I think expose them
We
to the
don't
most
have infinite
basic.
school days.
We don't have infinite school days.
I think
huh?
expose them
You-
to the most basic level possible, and then let them decide from there if they want to continue their time on it.
So you think we should expose people to these, but not make them learn it?
Because like when I was in school, I learned
That's
like
quite fair.
what hieroglyphics are. I learned about cuneiform. I took a music class, stuff like that, and I chose.
Right. But that's different.
Yeah, I chose what I wanted to do.
Exposure and teaching
That's
are
what I'm
very
saying.
different.
Is
yeah.
like
Right.
I think
You can explain to someone what the Rosetta Stone is without actually making them memorize it.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
That's where I sit, because I feel like that a lot of times we're kind of living in a world where people are forced to kind of believe what they were taught is good, because growing up you think the adult's always right, and instead just kind of
They are always right.
But instead, yeah, I mean, I'm always
Kids
correct.
are listening. Shut up, man. No, I'm just kidding.
So instead, give them.
Shit, I hope kids aren't listening.
But now they're screwed.
Instead, give them that.
Poor
Shut off your computers,
give them,
kids.
A little bit of leverage where they can say, "Hey, I like this. I want to move forward in this direction."
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely
Well,
right.
you
This is what we were talking about. So, authority, to have authority, you have to be a good steward. And I think this is one of the reasons I was talking about. I think that people are lying to polls these days because they don't think authority, in general, not all authorities, not all people, not all systems, but people are starting to feel more and more like authority is being abused, and that's why they lie to them. And because it's just always about, you have to listen to us, and that's the lesson, not think for yourself, not expand.
There's a thin line. When I was in residency, a nurse filed a complaint against me. She says I was very authoritarian. What did she say?
Authoritative. Authoritarian.
She said I was very authoritarian. I went to speak with the psychologist of the residency program and
Mhm.
said, "This is what the nurse said about me. What do you think?" He says, "No, you're authoritative. You're not authoritarian."
Mhm.
So I think the problem is when someone who has authority becomes authoritarian. This is when the crossover happens.
Right, right.
That there's a line between.
Well, you know what? The only way you know the difference between the two is research. Research, people. Life's a journey. That's how you know the truth.
But it's kind of hard when you're the person in the position because.
No,
the lines
it's not
get
your
smudged.
responsibility. It's their responsibility. It's that person who accused you of being authoritarian. That was her responsibility to figure out the difference between the two and figure out which one you were. She didn't. She didn't live up to it.
That's where.
That's part of a society.
That's
you
where
know.
language and communication comes in.
Right.
Going back to what you were saying, I'll give you an example. When Neil Armstrong was talking in front of a group of Japanese students,
Mhm.
one of them asked, they were talking through an interpreter,
Mhm.
and they asked, well, what was it like up there on the
Mhm.
moon? And he said, well, it wasn't made out of cheese and there was no man on the moon, something like that.
Mhm.
The interpreter said there was no rabbit up there. There was no rabbit on the moon.
Go on. I mean, I watched a
So-
lot of Looney Tunes, but I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Exactly. This is why that's what I'm getting to your point. Is that if you translated it, it would have made no sense to them. But the interpreter understood that the Asian cultures and the South Pacific cultures,
Had a
when they
thing with a
look at the
rabbit on the
moon, they see a rabbit on the moon, not a man on the moon. It's not made of cheese. So if they translated it, the kids would be like, "What? What are you talking about, old man?" You know.
Right.
So that's the difference between language and interpreting language and communicating. So until we teach people how to communicate with one another and understand, they have the metacognition to understand the thinking behind the thinking and to be able to
Right.
communicate that with one another. It doesn't matter what you teach them if they can't translate it to another person. If they're stuck in their head, like as a mercurial little creature running around in their skull, it's not going to help them until they can reach out and expand and overlap into thoughts. And
Do you think that that's a bigger problem than what I was saying about learning different types of languages? That actually
Yeah, that's what I'm
communicating with people is the larger
Yeah.
problem? Okay.
No, you could learn every language on the planet. If you don't know how to communicate with someone, people speaking English to English on the subway can't communicate with each other.
Yeah.
I've seen it every day on the subway going to work.
That happened inside my van on the cross-country trip. I started talking alligator talk. My wife's like, "What do you say?" I was like, "Oh, you want to say? I'll go over there." Yeah, she's like, "I don't understand what you're saying."
Well,
I
my
picked up
favorite
the language
language-
before she did.
You know my favorite language?
What?
No. Jive.
Are we going full airplane here?
Damn right.
I picked the wrong podcast to stop sniffing
Better
globe.
side, mama.
Yes, you
It's a
did.
better side.
And don't call me Shirley.
All right. Well, okay. So that was interesting. I was expecting more detail on that, but that's all right. You still get a B plus. All right. So.
You actually put B+ down.
Guys,
Actually, you know,
dedication as a host.
on the subject of Jive, did anybody here watch The 100?
No.
one was that?
What was that?
I know it, but I didn't.
It's a CW show about kids sent down to Earth 100 years after the planet gets blown to hell.
Oh, my wife was telling me about that. Yeah.
Some of the people on Earth, you kind of pick it up. They're speaking a kind of slang jive that has evolved over 100 years. And so they actually give subtitles for it.
Oh,
but
so like Gaelic.
you can kind of hear what they're saying.
how cool is that?
We have completely gone off the rails, ladies and gentlemen.
A show for you to watch if you got the time. Check out The 100.
Okay, cool.
Go through the first season. If you don't want to watch it after that, stop. But
Okay.
they're on like 5 now.
There's a great. Speaking of translation, though, you've got to have an intelligent translator because there's a great.
And a worldly translator.
There's this great picture of a street sign in Wales, and because Wales has got that dual English and Welsh language thing, and the Welsh language makes Gaelic look normal.
Really.
And so it's a and I don't even know if it's free. I've seen the picture. I don't know what the bottom says, but the story around it is that the top says like all lorries must turn left or something like that. All trucks must turn left.
Right.
The bottom, in theory, says the same thing in Welsh. The story around it is one about automated translation, and that the request was sent off and the Welsh came back and they put it on the
An
sign.
army of bureaucats munched away.
The sign,
And a sign was
says, the
produced.
sign says our translator is out until Tuesday. We'll get back to you.
Are you shitting me?
That's the story. That you know.
That's
because
awesome.
You don't,
If you sell that sign, I will buy it.
you know, it's that
If you tell me to sign in, I'll steal it. I'll hop a plane tomorrow and get it.
I just make it.
Yeah, I know, right? But the idea being that you
fun.
can't, you know, that's something like an automated translation. If you don't know what's coming back,
Right.
how you need to like at least retranslate the translation so that you see is it at least in the realm of reality.
So, former colleague of ours, Simon,
Yeah.
at one time he had a little web page up that described Russian sayings and English translations and things that you shouldn't say.
Okay.
And I just, one of them that has always stuck with me, it was translated, "I feel myself fine." And his note was, "Ask your American friends why this is wrong."
Sounds perfectly right.
Not
to
for me. Worst office pranks. Okay, cool. So this is going to be a weird one. It's going to probably take a little explanation for me, but I think it's worth it. What risk strategy makes a successful business person? So business for sure is about risk. Everybody here has got at least a little bit of experience with business. So what are we talking about? Where is the place that you focus on dealing with risk or managing risk? Is it taking risks? Is it positioning to avoid risk? Are you managing the consequences of failed risk? Or managing the expectations of risk, what people expect the risks to be? Which is the most important one?
You gotta read that. That's a lot of words.
I think,
I think
Again, taking risks. So is it
Right.
actually taking the risk, sticking your money out there, putting your investments out there, sticking your neck out? Is that the important thing? Is it avoiding the risks completely? Dodging and weaving and trying to prevent a situation from happening? Is it managing the consequences of failed risk? In other words, knowing how to fail, roll, stand back up after you failed, or is it the expectations? What people.
there's a fifth for you,
Okay, great.
and that's the mitigating of the risk, which is different than avoiding the risk.
Okay, different.
It's
Calculated?
it's allowing the risk to happen, but for allowing the negative consequence of the risk to happen, but it's somebody else's problem. I mean, the prime example of risk mitigation is insurance.
Okay.
If something goes wrong, I don't pay for it. The insurance company does.
So the unnice
So
name
the
for that
risk
would be like
wasn't-
passing the buck.
Not
passing.
as much. I mean, it can be done above board. I would think of passing the buck as being more below board, but
Right,
I
right.
would say it's taking the risk and mitigating against unexpected risk.
Okay.
Being in a position to say, yes, I took these risks, and I know what the risks are.
Right.
Maybe that's the sixth is knowing what the risks are,
No other risks.
and then you can make informed decisions about the rest. But I mean, everybody mitigates against risk. It can happen,
Interesting.
but if it does, here's how we're going to react. You don't avoid it, otherwise you never take the risk in the first place.
That's what I think. I feel like if you going in something, let's say you're starting up a business, you need to know there are going to be risks. Like, it's inevitable, things are going to go wrong and you're going to screw up. But what separates you is having that backup plan, that plan B, plan C, and D behind what you're doing to make sure that, like, even if the risk happens and things go south, you can still bounce back from it. Like, whether it be like just anything, like you're trying to write the prompt, Microsoft Word fails, and then Notepad fails, and then you go to Photoshop and you type it up in there, But you still
Right.
have those like backup plans, and you know that the potential for it to go wrong in those 2 hours before you get here
Right,
is still there.
Wow, that's hardcore to do text in Photoshop. That's
Yeah.
But listen, if
Well,
it,
I've done it.
I've done it too. I've printed images in Word because I was desperate. There's nothing else working.
I've known people to make logos in Word. They weren't good logos, but they were still logos.
Right.
I think there's a difference I think the question lies, the principle lies where is it a standard business, something that's already modeled, or it's something new that you're striving to go for? Because
Okay.
If it's something brand new, because technology advancement always comes when you go to that edge of knowledge.
Right. This is a good point.
Into the
this is a good point of the
unknown.
difference about your business experience in your business world, and a lot of us. Technology is every 10 years it looks completely different than it did 10
Right.
years ago. Your business is 80% the same.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
from every
So the
decade.
question is, I think the most, from all the choices you gave, is being prepared to recover from risks, because if you're doing new advancements that haven't been done before, how can you tell what the risks will be?
Managing the consequence of failed risk. Interesting. Okay, cool.
And I open that up to you guys, because you talked about a risk, but it's like, how do we know what the risks are if it's a brand new field? I mean, if we're opening up a deli, we could read like 20,000 business plans of delis and what happened in the deli, and refrigeration and backup generators and stuff like that. But if it's brand spanking new, like, how the hell do we know what we're getting into?
That's when you have the backup plan to that entire plan. Like, you want to open up a deli, something goes haywire. Like, let's say you open a deli, you're worried about like refrigeration and everything, but then the ceiling falls in.
Yeah.
You didn't expect for that to happen, but your backup plan to that deli business is what'll save you.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I think there's also a successful business person can not have a plan. Yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't have any plans. They've got A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
The successful business plan person is the one that can figure out E when he needs it.
Yeah, and bounce back from it
Yeah,
instantly.
and just say, oh, well, I didn't have a plan for what the hell happened when the ceiling fell in, but you know what? We'll paint it black and we'll get down. You know, and just go.
Right.
You know, don't be
It's-
afraid
it's
to
a
take
sunroof
the
now.
risk. Yep.
Yeah.
Look, we have an atrium.
Exactly.
You get to see
Outdoor
a bunch of
dining
pipes
area.
and rats.
So it's
amazing.
spontaneity,
Yep.
ability to.
Adaptability.
Adaptability.
Yeah. And not overthinking it. Make a decision and move
I
on.
mean, this isn't for me. I'm asking for a friend.
But I'm still a bit more of like the right brain approach, because it's like and a super analytical person, I feel like something like that happened would panic, you know?
Yeah, it needs the creative
You
side.
need,
Yeah.
you need to be creative for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Those are great answers. Thank you so much. You guys are really making this panel worthwhile. I hope everyone is enjoying it as much as I am, because otherwise I just have to
That's all
quit
right.
because I don't really get it. I don't really like if this isn't good enough, I don't get it. So I'm having a good time. Have you guys ever been a celebrity?
I'm on Facebook right now.
Does that make you a celebrity? Is that all it
I
takes?
gotta say,
What did you
both of my
think?
Twitter followers think so.
Really?
Both of them, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. So I
Bombing-
Just Photoshop and keep copying and pasting them over and over again.
I have one
There's a term for that.
incident I can relate.
Okay. But I have to give him
incident?
credit. This is
Yeah.
actually Lee's question. So thank you, Lee. That was a good question.
So, a couple years back, well, first of all, a little background. As I mentioned in my first show with you, I have spent ridiculous amounts of time online answering questions for people who have technical issues. And I've probably gotten a little recognition from that. I mean, Microsoft recognized me for the participation there, and I got a little bit known.
Nice.
But
You're kind of an MVP celebrity a little bit.
so, couple
Makes
years
sense with what I've seen.
couple years back, I went to a conference, and I had pre-registered. I walk in the building, I go up to the table to pick up my badge, and I identify myself, and there's a guy behind the counter who looks up and goes, "You're Lee Wilbur?"
Nice.
Like, yeah? It was the weirdest thing to me, because somebody who I had absolutely no clue who he was recognized me.
Is that the point of celebrity where someone you have just no reference point for whatsoever is like knows a meaningful amount of data about you?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So like when the police want to arrest you and there's a warrant out and you got 3 stars, so to speak, that's kind of being a celebrity too. In a bad way, infamous, right?
If I get 15,000 likes, I'll turn myself in.
Yeah, nice.
But no.
I think you just wrote some good sci-fi right there.
The definition of
No, that
celebrity
happened.
is so weird.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay.
The definition of celebrity is so weird. I mean, you can be a celebrity in the sense where you can just constantly shitpost on social media, and you can be infamous for it. And
Yeah.
be known that way.
There's some the top trolls.
Yeah, I mean, or you could be like.
A lot of them got kicked off in the past couple of years, but there was, especially like if you could rewind time, if you've just joined social media now, if you rewind time back 2 or 3 years, yeah, man, there were some people with millions of followers who were just
Or you-
trolls. They
or you
just
could also
started
be-
fights with people.
You could also be a celebrity exclusively on something like Instagram, have like a million followers, and just do nothing but record from your webcam all day. It's like it kind of just depends. What do you consider?
It helps
special?
if you have perky boobs.
But-
There's definitely some of that.
No, but then you have someone like Billie Eilish, who like got famous from just like literally mumbling into a microphone with her brother, and she made music, and now she's playing like concerts and like she's filling out Madison Square Garden and stuff. After
Yeah.
Her debut, like her debut top charts after her singles did. It's just.
Well,
it-
this is one of the things we were talking about in our show, is that sometimes being an artist in the digital world is really just a matter of just getting up one more time than you failed, and if you do something 10,000 times and your other 9,999 times are terrible and one of them is good, you got it. It's digital, man. You got a copy of it. Now you can share it with the world, and that's it.
I think just what to realize is that no one cares about who you are or what you make, and I think being a celebrity is when people start to care.
Right.
You know, like you could say that, like you could say, "Hey, I'm an actor," and like, great, I don't care. But they say, "Hey, I'm an actor. I'm going to be in the Avengers," and like, "Oh, wow." You know, I think that's kind of the
Right, right.
difference.
So once you hit a celebrity net worth list, then you're a celebrity, but there's no
What-
I don't
what-
think-
just you public net worth
I think
list?
I think it's your accolades. I think that's more what it is. If your accolade in someone's eyes is worth enough,
Mhm.
that's what could make you make you one.
Interesting. Does anybody, you guys want to chime in on this, or? I mean, I guess we're all celebrities now, right? Yeah, I actually have a good story. I don't know if I've told this story on the show before. So I actually got into a fight with like 30 people. It wasn't an actual fight. I was very angry. It had nothing to do with those people. But a situation was presented to me where I was able to help someone. And it was like, I don't know, 25, 30 guys picking on like 3 people. And you were kids, you know, and kids do crazy things. I'm not judging them, and they shouldn't judge me for stopping them if they do. You're gonna get it. But they were basically trying to beat these guys to a pulp. And I'm out in the parking lot, and I'm like, I was just in a really bad place mentally. I was very angry, and I just ran into the middle of it. I said, "You're gonna stop this right now." And I screamed so loud, and I was so angry. I mean, I was just fury. I mean, I really could have killed someone back at that point. I mean, and it would have been self-defense, or at least defense of another human life. So I'm not that worried about saying that, because I was in a bad place, and they were doing something terrible. So it's both things together, and they ran. I actually chased a bunch of people away, and I mean, I was bigger and older, so that was part of it. You know, I was bigger than the biggest guy there, but they panicked and they ran, and I think a couple of them realized after, like most of them ran away. Like, wait a minute, there's like 30 of us, and one of that guy, but. That's not the point. I'm not trying to like elevate myself. The thing that was interesting about it
This
is,
was
Banthas?
No, elevate away, please.
This was 5 years ago, and they were 8
Were
years
the-
old.
no, I was a teenager. That's how long ago. It was.
Were they banthas? You know, they're easily scared, but they come back in greater numbers?
Yes, yes, I think they were, and they had Mustangs. Banthas with Mustangs. So, the thing that's interesting about it is, like weeks later, I was working at a job as a clerk, and 2 of the girls that knew those guys that I had stopped from getting beaten up, like, that's the guy that saved Bob, or whatever his name was. And just for that 1 minute, I really and truly, I had no idea who they were until they were mumbling and giggling and like, they were so happy to see me. And then they told me what was going on. For that 1 minute, I was a celebrity. I was like, okay, this is, now I get it, you know. I really, and the best part about it is I felt like I deserved it, you know. I really didn't, because I was just angry. I would have just, you know, I could have had the same reaction if somebody gave me a parking ticket. But I was just that mad. But, you know, something came along and I was able to do some good with it, so. Threesome?
I was thinking, thank you for asking.
Story continue.
And the story ends there.
Yeah.
So,
Officially.
officially the story ends there. So let's see. Do you agree that men create their identity around their career? I think that's kind of pretty common psychology. I mean, I did introduce you all with your careers.
If you'd asked, if I hadn't seen the rest of the question,
Yeah,
I would say yes.
you'd say yes, right? Cool. Okay, good. You've fallen from my trap. Thank you for being
If I
honest.
hadn't seen the rest
You
of
hadn't
the
seen the
question.
rest.
I
of
didn't
it.
see the rest of the question.
Okay, good. So,
I don't actually have the question,
My
so.
answer is no.
That you don't.
yeah, you do.
I think that, well, for me personally, I feel like my career is built around my personality.
Most men,
generically,
in my
societally.
experience, most men will say, "I'm a construction worker." I'm, you know, if you ask.
Oh, you're
me,
talking about
"What
like how
do you
they
do?"
identify? Like if you
Not
say
like I
some-
collect stamps.
What's your
I let
worth?
them mow
And
my
that's what they
lawn. You know, occasionally you get like I love heavy metal, or you know, like I'm a huge sports fan or something like that. But usually it's I do this.
Like when I was younger, when I was a teenager, and someone asked me, "What are you?" Like I wouldn't refer to myself as a concessions at a movie theater. You know, my life wasn't kind of revolving around that. It might be
Right.
different.
Yeah, that's because you were a teen.
Yeah, I think it's also different when you get into the career world because I guess that's more like that now, but it's still tied to a passion.
I'll tell you one thing. Like as a person who's done the career thing and done lots of the clerk job thing too, you know, the thing about the career thing is because you get a salary, you're expected to solve the problems within a timely fashion
eventually, no matter what.
Oh yeah.
You never stop thinking about your job.
Mhm.
You might stop yourself from thinking about a job and go on vacation, but when you come back from vacation, you're back to thinking about it again. Just because
yeah.
you go home or you're commuting doesn't mean you're not thinking
I've
about
thought about programming errors constantly, and I've like fixed it in my dreams before too.
it. Right,
Right.
yeah. And that's how that, but most white collar jobs are like that. There are some where you go home.
Yeah.
But even then, you don't really stop thinking about
Well,
it.
like yeah, if your boss is an ass, you know, and like then you go home, you're still that still could be.
Well,
on your
yeah,
mind,
you
too.
know, you're trying to
So-
there's so many puzzles.
Rick-
It's
So
infinite
go-
puzzles.
Do the rest of
Do
the.
the rest. Okay, he's excited about this, I can tell. So this is why I wanted to give you guys the sheets. You can read them ahead of time.
Can you read the first part of the question again?
Do you agree that men create their identity around their career?
See, I would say that men tend to identify people by their career.
For sure, yes.
Not necessarily, I mean, gender doesn't matter. Thinking about it right or wrong, I'm interested in what anybody does, male or female, I don't care. I meet
Right.
somebody, I start talking to them.
All right, did you read the question?
No.
Okay. Very good answer. I like your. You're not cheating, you swear. Because that's a great answer. Wait to hear where this goes. So.
Horrible answer to the question. The question was, do men build their career?
Well, yeah, but I
identity
mean,
around
this
their
is-
career.
But this is like.
Who cares about
this has
women
been
in the
psychology
question
101
of
for
do
100
men do
years,
this?
Right? So do women do that? Do they identify
Yes.
themselves around their careers? Okay.
Because I think,
Yeah.
and this is where I said if I hadn't seen the rest, because I think you really need to restate that question. Then, if you're going to bring them both in, I don't think it is. To your point, I don't think it is a man and woman thing.
I think
I
it is.
think
I've
it's-
known plenty of women who just like they can't wait to get out of their white collar job and they're done. I've also known plenty of women who are damn proud of what they do and that's who they are.
Right, and,
You know,
and I think so. I
I
don't
mean, I
think
can think of a
it's-
lawyer right now who is definitely a lawyer now, and she will always be a lawyer. And on the other hand, I can also think of a school teacher who is a school teacher until 3:30, and then they're not a school teacher anymore until the next Monday. You know.
But is that a man-woman difference, or is that just a current societal reality is significantly higher number of men are that professional than women? Not because they're not capable or anything else, just look at the numbers, the numbers
Not
are
even
what the numbers
not even
are.
gonna answer it. I don't even know.
Chicken shit.
Yeah.
I think
No, I don't
so
know. I really don't know.
I think
I'm not
it's
being
people
chicken.
that have
Well, I just
careers.
figure out the crap that I don't know, and I ask you guys.
I think it's people that have careers build their identity around the career.
Right.
I don't think there's a male and female issue there.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
think a professional doctor sees themselves as a professional doctor. A professional lawyer sees
Right.
themselves. There aren't really amateur doctors and amateur lawyers, but.
Oh!
Well, okay.
Sorry about
That's another
that.
episode.
It's not a hobby. Let's put it that way.
It might as well be.
I may diddle with a guitar on a Saturday. Now, I'm not going to call myself a musician. I don't think that people are like, diddling with.
Are you
medicine
confessing
on a
to diddling your
Saturday,
guitar?
No, they're diddling.
But yeah,
But that's because I think the complexity of the
Yeah.
puzzles, for sure. But also, I think there's a social aspect too. I see a difference. I see most men that work, separating white collar and blue collar jobs, because blue collars tend to be hourly, more typically hourly, or at least some of the people in the blue collar environment are hourly, and they're. But I don't know. I mean, I've seen some blue collar jobs that are also permanent salary jobs where they identify as their job.
I would also think it depends what you're passionate about.
Right.
If you really love what you do, then you're more inclined to identify with that and identify yourself that way.
Right.
Well, I was also just thinking, when I was about my answer when I said no. Also, I completely forgot that yesterday, instead of me going home when I had the opportunity, I was working here till 4 a.m. on stuff.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess that also factors into it.
And when I first started in technology, I'd go home
There's always more to do.
and my network, I wanted to rival my network at work.
Right.
I've got other things I'm doing now that I don't have the time to make it rival the network I have at work. But then again,
Right.
But I think there's a difference between wanting to.
I don't even need the rest of the questions. You guys are just implying them, so.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between wanting to do something to its maximum potential and defining one's personality through their job function. I think people who define their personality through job function possibly could have some sort of deficit in their life, something they're searching for to fulfill themselves, because they don't find it within themselves. They're not looking interior at the person who they are, to grow and expand, to be part of the current, to look in. They're just looking for something to build upon themselves, something external and extrinsic.
I think you're overanalyzing. I think this is a scenario where first response is right response. And let's just come back up to the top of the page. Lee, admin, Rares doctor, Walden business owner. I'll give you credit. You musician was the first one listed there, but
Hey,
you
that's
know,
what he
you're
wants to
also
talk about in my
significant-
show. That's what I
You're
gave
also
him.
significantly younger, so I think that it's.
He's really good.
I put
None
my
of us
producer on
went,
there, but yeah.
hey, introduce me as a father, or introduce me as a tennis player, or introduce me as a fisherman. It was our career.
So
Yeah, but when I go to parties and people don't know me, they say, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
I tell them I'm an aspiring writer. I don't tell them I'm
you
a
guys.
physician.
Okay.
Because I don't go,
This is crazy.
I don't
We only have
find
5 minutes
myself
left.
as a
yeah, I
physician.
know.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough.
I just don't. I don't.
We're
I'm
all-
rare, so I'm just, you
On
know.
average, if that room had 100 people in
I'll
it,
skip the last question.
how many of them would say, I'm a, whatever they do for a living?
That's up to them. I'm talking about myself personally. I'm
Well,
just,
but the question was generically about men in general, societal men.
Right.
if you want to focus on the question directly, yes.
We're also technocrats,
But
keep that in mind.
my thing
So,
is that
we're weird.
if
Well,
someone
we're
has,
lots of things.
if
That's
someone
okay.
has to use their profession to define who they are, I'm just saying it possibly could be a lack of because they're searching for something, they're lacking something on the inside
Right. I
that they're
always thought
trying
it
to
was- yeah.
externally try to bring in to
Well,
expand on
So
themselves.
I can, so I have a
Or
weird
they're not, and they
situation
have
where
a
I'm
profession
not,
that is their.
I'm doing this right
thing.
now, and this is not what I was doing before. I completely changed careers,
Yeah.
like midstream, and so like, it was pretty jarring, and, I mean, I always hated telling people that I was an admin, because I'm like, I'm so much more than this. This sucks. I wanna talk about motorcycles, or my family, or psychology, or, and it just bothered me that I was stuck with this title. That this is the thing that I slug away at all day.
Be honest, you stopped telling people you're an admin for the same reason the rest of us stopped telling people we're in computers, because no, we cannot fix your phone.
Yeah, well,
I've actually,
that has happened too, yes.
I've actually gotten free tea because I went to a tea shop whose AV receiver in the back was broken. And by broken, I mean they didn't compare their phone through Bluetooth. And I just went out back, I pressed 2 buttons, and then I paired my phone. I'm like, oh, you got music. I'm like, you get free tea. Here, take this. And I'm like, okay.
Nice.
Okay.
For like
Nice.
2 minutes of work.
I once fixed the Huntington post office door with a screwdriver.
Do they
So-
give you free mail?
No, I'm kind of annoyed with that.
So I'm gonna alter this question a little
Surprised they
bit.
didn't arrest you.
Now keep in mind, I was writing these questions,
I actually showed
the
them.
end of the list is the end of the question, so I was literally writing this question since I'm running out the door, but I'm gonna actually change this a little based on your reactions. So I wanna say, do oaths change or grow career identity? Do
Do
they
what?
grow career identity? Do oaths?
Oaths to your career?
Yeah, like a person takes an oath when they join the military, a person takes an oath when they work for the post office, the doctor takes an oth. I remember thinking specifically of you mentioning that you have your own oath on top
Yeah,
of
he has,
your
he has his own
oath.
take on his oath. I think that doesn't. I think
That's
he's
amazing,
gonna
and
step into the
actually,
role.
so the question is, how do oaths affect careers? Do they solidify that career as your identity, or
I think it just affects your ethics. I
Yeah.
don't think it affects your career.
it doesn't affect your identity?
Well, I mean,
Could
your
affect
ethics.
career, depend-
Yeah.
If you're a doctor.
I hereby swear to do only evil.
I think almost by definition, if it's a sincere oath,
I think
it
most people
has
it
to
is.
affect it. I mean,
Right.
otherwise you're not holding to the oath.
Interesting. Okay. I'm trying to get to the core of this this thing it's interesting to me that I can intro people. I'm not picking on you guys. You guys actually got this question, so you get to deal with it. But I mean, I introduce everybody by what they do. I talk about what they do, and I'll give them a little bit, and then I'll let them go.
Okay, but okay, so let me turn.
But no one questions
Let me turn
that.
that question
except
around
me.
for you. For the female guests you have, did you do the same?
Of course.
So,
Right.
there's your answer.
Right. Well, they had the opportunity, and I did the
As
same.
do we all.
Right. But I'm not. It could be a leftover from a male-dominated society. This might change. We may stop identifying ourselves as our careers. if we become more feminine, if we become more, you know, women become more involved.
But okay, why
And
not?
I'm wondering
why
if
not
that's a good
say?
thing?
I mean, yeah, that's said almost as though you were saying it.
Right, and then the question is
The
now,
exact
if
opposite is
if
equally
oaths enhance
effective.
identity and we become more feminine and people start identifying with their careers, doesn't that move us away from oaths? And isn't that destructive?
Yeah, I'm not following where you're.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't
I'm
see
not
the
picking up what you're
femininity
throwing
is.
You know, I think one of the problems is that
I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just saying that these things seem like they could connect to each other to me.
yeah, I think the problem is that we always try to put people into little boxes and
Mhm.
put these little boxes and shelves in a very organized manner, and it doesn't work that way.
I agree.
You know,
I
it's,
completely agree.
We're just.
I was
very-
just saying I hated that. Right. So
Yeah.
okay.
So I think that we just can't standardize this.
Great, okay. I like your answers. I like your uppityness, and you're like, fuck that, yeah, put me in a box. You know, I feel like Rage Against the Machine should play or something here.
Wow, chicka wow wow, wow wow, chicka wow wow.
Tom Morello was here, that'd be a different conversation. I can guarantee you that.
And they're very sorry about Limp Bizkit. All right, last question. I'm going to skip the very, very last question. One last question, and then we'll call it a night. What is the worst social media gaffe that you've ever witnessed?
Like worse in a good
The
way or
worst, like
genuinely
the
bad?
absolute, like total disaster. They never
Remember
should
you
have said
discussed,
that.
like,
They
we couldn't
never
agree
should have
on
done that.
Yeah.
Worst in a good way. What exactly does
Worse
that
is something
mean?
that you get entertainment out of.
That's because Steve is
Not
notorious.
like an not necessarily an objectively bad sense, but a sense where you're like, how did this happen, kind of thing.
Well, I think the worst one is recently I heard about the nurse who was fired because she saw a kid with measles and the kid was transferred to the ICU in the hospital.
Right.
And she still is, from what I understand, an anti-vaxxer. And she said, you know, this is a horrible disease, but I still wouldn't vaccinate my child. And she was actually thinking of, this is from what I heard, I didn't read up on this, I didn't go to the library, I didn't research this.
It's okay.
But from what I hear, that she wanted to take a probe, a swab from this measles child to actually inoculate her child at home. That's what I heard, you know. But she put this on Facebook, and she lost her job. Now,
Wow, that's pretty bad.
yeah, but should she lose her job because she had a passing thought and she put it out in media? Why should we lose our jobs for it?
That's a good question.
If
I
she
would-
didn't
no one
unban
comes back to that, I
privacy
will come back to
settings, then.
that. What's the worst gaffe you've ever seen?
A friend of mine had posted something about his court date, and he was in some way, I don't remember the exact details, but he was in some way trashing the judge and the whole process. And I'm like, dude, you should take that down. Because he was going to have to go back to court and potentially be sentenced for something. It's like, not a wise move.
Yeah, you should say that shit
Talk about
after
poking the bear, man.
after your sentence is passed, then you can make the
Yeah.
comments, you know.
You know, beforehand, no. Judges can look on Facebook. They can look people up.
No, the internet's not real in the real world.
Especially this person who has a rather large number of friends and talks to just about anyone he can talk to.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. You guys want to chime in? Can you think of anything in particular?
I mean, almost the
I
reverse.
mean, it could be
comes-
funniest too.
Yeah,
like
no,
most
I'm almost on
ridiculous.
the other side of like thinking that social media is. Who cares what you do on social media? It's social media. It's fun. It's not supposed to be career altering. It's a social media gaffe should be like saying, oh fuck, oh well, move on. You know, the idea that it matters is the gaffe.
Thank you very much. Touche.
I was thinking about Shia LaBeouf in the past decade. That's the first thing that came to mind. when I said that.
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
He's an actor. He kind of started off as
The
like
whole
an
thing's a
actor
big gaffe.
for childhood movies, for childhood TV shows, and went to Transformers. And after that, he kind of just went super political, and then just went on a downward spiral. The most notable event that I could think of, because he's in the movie soon. That's why it was on my mind.
Yeah, you
Um,
mentioned him in the show.
But he did this thing where he basically took this is when Trump was first elected. He made a flag. It was white with black text.
I
in it
remember
that
this.
says "He will not divide us." and he hung up the flag and he live streamed it, and that was his form of protest.
Good.
Go to 4chan. On the politically incorrect threads, they actually were able to look at the flag. They looked at it from the time of day in the live stream,
Yeah.
from the flight paths, from the sun direction, everything, and they were able to track down the flag and
The
take it
local
down.
kinds of birds.
Local kinds of
that live
birds,
in
too.
the area.
Why?
And they took down the flag. It was just like their way of protesting back.
It became a game of capture the flag, and they went through 3 iterations.
No, 4.
4 iterations of
Because
capture
so
the
then
flag.
there's another time where they put it on top of a massive building with heightened security. And on top of the building with heightened security, people still zip lined in to get the flag and move it. And there's another situation where it was in a cabin in the middle of the woods, and people could just hear renovations happening. And then from the renovations, they went and they saw it, and it's like, hey, I live right over here, and they got the flag. Now where it exists right now, I don't know if it's still streaming, is in a room against a white wall in a house. They found the house. Based on the lighting, like I said, they know where it exists, but no one has gone inside yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if he has alligators in there. I might.
That's why when he said worse this and worse in a good way, that made me laugh hysterically.
That's pretty funny and also awful at the same time.
Yeah, no, it is awful, but like it started off with just kind of like minor back and
But
forth.
you know what? I
and then-
kind of like.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
not a social media
to
gap.
me,
Now that's just
to
become cool.
me, that's
Yeah.
like social media. This is the
But
thing
that's
that's
your
great
perspective.
about it. If we just don't take it seriously, we could just have giant games
Thank
that
you.
capture the flag.
Thank you. Look, like right now, like earlier, you said, I felt like killing those people.
Yeah.
Which is a very normal human reaction to feel like killing another human being at
Right,
one
right.
point in your life. You
Right.
should not be held accountable and say, oh, shit, no, he has psychopathic tendencies, he wanted to murder someone. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Well,
like,
they were basically beating people to death in front of me, and with
yeah,
very
yeah,
unfair
that's
odds.
that's your perspective.
Right.
But, someone could take your words out of context, and I don't think social media
Right.
should.
I chose
really
that
have
example
an
very
influence.
carefully.
Yeah.
But why should I have to, right?
You shouldn't have to.
I shouldn't
But
have
if
to.
someone says that I had a passing thought of doing this, it shouldn't have any bearing on their career.
Right. So I think you guys are saying what I wanted to say.
To that end, and I know you're trying to wind down, so I probably shouldn't say this.
Go for it,
But the
Lee.
question then is, should employers and the government be allowed to view otherwise private posts on Facebook?
Yes, but I don't think you should be
Just
able to act on it.
mind your fucking business.
No, well, the
Grace
key
inherent
point
bias.
is
I
you
don't think
said
they should be
otherwise
legally allowed
private.
to act
Yes.
on it.
I mean, like, you've put on your
Unless there's a
privacy
clear and present
settings
danger.
Yeah.
that say it's not a public post,
Right.
and they're going in and saying, okay, we want to see the page before we hire you.
Unless it's a clear and present danger, I think that's the normal standard for if there's a physical threat to life or health. No,
But
they
what
shouldn't be
does
able to
that
do anything about it.
But how do you define that?
Well, that's that's a long process, but it's generally, do they have the ability to do harm to people? Are they planning to do harm? And so in other words, do they have intent? Are they ready? And do they have the actual ability? If the answer to both is yes, then yeah, fire their ass if they're going to do something bad.
So you think
if
that
their
they should have
role
been
is going to let
fired?
them do something bad? But if those conditions aren't met, no.
So you
Just
think that-
I want to kill those guys isn't
But
mean.
that wasn't his question.
No.
No.
So you're assuming, I think,
Right.
that
I mean,
the,
it's a
that,
very-
that
it's
the
a wide
post
variety of situations.
that the post is made public and that anyone can stumble across that person and say, "Oh, look, he just said this."
Right. That's what I'm assuming.
What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I've marked this to be only accessible to my friends.
Oh, that's bonkers. Yeah, no, you shouldn't be able to. If you set privacy settings, then they've essentially hacked your privacy
And
settings.
yet, there are many companies, as I've heard, who are requiring you to give in your Facebook account and password so they can review the kind of person you are
Password?
with your friends.
Password?
Yeah. So they can check what you've posted.
Wow. And this is exactly why I have exactly the same personality in private and in public. What you
Password?
see is what you get.
This is why my
And I've been
privacy
this way.
settings are set to all on public.
Right, exactly, because there's absolutely no
Yep.
point. But you know what? That's not right. It shouldn't have to be like that. That's wrong. I agree with
Well, I do not post.
First of all, I think one of the things that we were all saying is forgiveness is critical.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to forgive people because sometimes people just talk, and sometimes it's just talk, and you say it. It's talk therapy. This is basic psychology. Talk therapy is basic psychology. You say it, you feel better, you're done. That's how humans work. If you don't know that, you're an alien. Back to those aliens again. But yeah. But
Yeah, if you have privacy settings and you have a contract with an outside organization and they agreed to privacy, and it's a violation of your privacy, I don't think they should be allowed to see that.
I don't think anyone should give out their passwords for anything.
No, no, they definitely shouldn't.
They could just
I don't think
log
anyone should
on and
remember their
become your
passwords.
friend and see what
Yeah.
you gotta say, but not your password.
You can't, but that's the problem with biometrics, right? You can't unremember your biometrics, but you can unremember your password. I'm pretty sure you can train yourself to forget a password if you try real hard.
You can poke your eyes out and burn off your fingers.
Oh, that's what I told him. That's what I
From
told
our
him the other
doctor.
day. I file my fingerprints every 2 weeks. So.
All right, guys. I think everyone here is dying, and it's been a lot of fun. This has definitely been a wonderful panel. Thank you guys for showing up. Particularly, thank you for Walden last minute. I appreciate it. You know, I was
Happy to.
and I'm glad to have you here, and you filled it out perfectly. Guys, thanks so much. Thanks for coming to the Technocrat Live and watching us. And we'll see you next week. I'm going to be on Tales from the Valley of the Ocean, and then next week's going to be a mashup because it's 4th of July. People, go watch some fireworks. Woo! And the following week is going to be Matt and Mike from their podcast. So good night. See you in a couple weeks.
Woo, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much.